Chapter 1853. What Gao Shui? Yi Fei was stunned for a moment before he reacted. This so-called Gao Shui was actually the pseudonym used by the previous human emperor, Wang Bai. Yi Fei was immediately depressed. Just this name alone made him have the urge to beat someone up. The surrounding bronze wizards also looked at him with suspicion and vigilance. However, the invisible god battle robe's effect was indeed extraordinary. Even though these wizards felt that Yi Fei was strange, they did not sense Yi Fei's presence, the bloodline of the human race. In other words, the strange kid standing in front of them was indeed a pure-blooded wizard. Yi Fei also smiled and said, "Holy masters, you may not know this, but I am not from a tribe. I am a refugee who calls the world my home." The wizard tribe was different from the human tribe. They only had cities and did not have a country. Instead, they had many large and small tribes. The strong tribes would annex and destroy the weak tribes. This was a common occurrence, and the remnants of the tribes that were annexed would become refugees, roaming the world as their home. For example, Shangzhou had once left the tribe and became a refugee and a corpse carrier. Therefore, Yi Fei's answer was flawless. Hearing that Yi Fei was not from a tribe, but a refugee, many wizards showed sympathetic expressions. After all, the internal strife of the wizard tribe was more serious and bloody than that of the human tribe. Almost every year, there would be tribes that were destroyed, and many new tribes would suddenly rise. For example, if Yi Fei's tribe was destroyed when he was young, it was understandable that he did not know many things. Immediately, a bronze sorcerer who sympathized with Yi Fei walked over and patted Yi Fei's shoulder, comforting him. "Little sorcerer, you look like an honest person. We'll give you a way out and bring you into Little Sorcerer City." Yi Fei quickly thanked him. "Thank you, holy masters." "Oh, the legend of the previous human emperor." "Oh, you mean the Gao Shui?" "This person's sins are too numerous to be recorded. It is said that when he was still a martial god, he often came to our lonely mountain ridge to show off. He killed and injured many great wizards. In the end, this person's arrogance finally angered the first wizard at that time. The sorcerer god personally took action and trapped him in the lonely mountain ridge. Just when many great wizards thought that he was dead for sure, Gao Shui did not hesitate to surrender to the sorcerer god. Yi Fei was extremely shocked. Surrender? How is that possible? That bastard is the human emperor. How could he surrender? The bronze sorcerer said hatefully, "This is the shamelessness of the previous human emperor. This person can say good things, but he looks honest and dull, but he is actually full of evil tricks." In order to gain the trust of the sorcerer god, he actually shamelessly wrote a letter of surrender with blood on the spot. He even bewitched the sorcerer god, saying that he was willing to steal the human emperor's seal and come here to surrender. In the end, the sorcerer god believed it and happily let Gao Shui go. He even waited outside the human tribe's impregnable pass for 10 years. Unfortunately, the sorcerer god did not wait for the human emperor's seal. Instead, the previous human emperor came and killed him outside the impregnable pass with the human emperor's seal. At this point, all the wizards present were filled with righteous indignation. Even Yi Fei felt that the sorcerer god's death was too unjust. Moreover, this was not the only great achievement that Wang Bai had. After the death of the sorcerer god, the sorcerer tribe was enraged. They swore to gather their army and fight to the death with the human tribe. In the end, it was Wang Bai who entered the lonely mountain ridge alone and personally hung the sorcerer god's corpse and whipped it. He even said that 10 days later, he would use the human tribe's army to flatten the lonely mountain ridge and completely destroy the sorcerer tribe. However, when the great sorcerers were gathering their troops and preparing for the final battle with the human tribe's army 10 days later, the human emperor's palace took advantage of the fact that the sorcerer tribe's rear was empty. They suddenly attacked little sorcerer cities and looted them. It was said that the human emperor's palace had taken away all the bricks used to pave the roads. Later, Wang Bai's actions finally enraged all the sorcerer gods. At that time, There were more than a dozen sorcerer gods who held the heaven and earth sacrificial ceremony consecutively. They planned to open up a second battlefield and bypass the human tribe's impregnable pass to attack the Zulon continent, where the human emperor's palace's forces were the most concentrated. In the end, Wang Bai dared to run in front of the sorcerer gods alone and made a spiritual oath, saying that he was willing to pay any price in exchange for a 100-year ceasefire with the sorcerer tribe. Although the sorcerer gods hated Wang Bai to the core, they were greedy for the great benefits that Wang Bai promised and saw that Wang Bai had made a spiritual oath that no warrior would dare to violate. Not only did the sorcerer gods easily give up on the heaven and earth sacrificial ceremony that had already been held successfully, but it was said that there were even more. The sorcerer gods were so hot-headed that they planned to betroth their daughters to Wang Bai on the spot. Hearing this, Yi Fei was also shocked. How is that possible? Once a warrior makes a spiritual oath, his soul will be destroyed immediately if he violates it. How can the human emperor still be alive? Many bronze sorcerers said hatefully, "This is the most shameless part of the previous human emperor." Later on, the sorcerer gods waited for 100 years in vain, but they still didn't see Wang Bai lead the human emperor's palace to open the human tribe's impregnable pass to surrender. Only then did our spies find out that the human emperor was so shameless that he used a substitute when making the oath. The great commander has always been using a fake name. It can't be. A spiritual oath can be made using a fake name. The heavenly axiom can accept that. Yi Fei didn't quite believe it. Many sorcerers sneered together. If that great commander, Gao, secretly hid a real person on his body when he was lying and made a real spiritual oath, would the heavenly axiom accept it? It can actually be done like that. Yi Fei was so shocked that his eyes widened. He would never have thought that a spiritual oath could be played like that. Needless to say, Wang Bai must have secretly hidden someone in the beastmark space. This way, when Wang Bai made a fake oath, he would let the person in the dark make a real spiritual oath. This way, the heavenly axiom would sense it and naturally accept the oath. Moreover, the person making the oath would be hiding on Wang Bai's body. The heavenly axiom's senses would naturally fall on Wang Bai's body at the same time. The sorcerer gods would naturally have a huge misunderstanding and think that the person making the spiritual oath was Wang Bai himself. Not only did they voluntarily give up the blood sacrifice of millions of people, but they were also cruelly fooled. What was even more infuriating was that Wang Bai's spiritual oath was not enough. He even bewitched the sorcerer gods to make the ancestral sorcerer oath as well, promising the sorcerer tribe that they would not attack the human tribe's impregnable pass for 1,000 years. The sorcerer god's original intention was to give Wang Bai enough time to eliminate the dissidents, unify the human tribe, and then obediently surrender to the sorcerer tribe. It was not until 100 years later that Wang Bai not only did not take the initiative to surrender, but also used only a short 100 years to break through to earthly venerable rank that the sorcerer gods realized that not only had they been humiliated and fooled, but because of the ancestral sorcerer oath, no matter how furious they were, they could not wait to eat Wang Bai's flesh and drink Wang Bai's blood. Chapter 1854. Kid, do you understand now? When other human warriors enter Lonely Mountain Ridge, as long as we don't encounter them, we can pretend we didn't see them. However, if warriors from Human Emperor Hall barge in, we have to kill every single one of them. All right, Little Witch City is right in front of us. Go to the Ancestral Sorcerer Temple to pay your respects. Come back and join our team after receiving the blessing of the Ancestral Sorcerer Temple. Our team is short of people. As the bronze sorcerers spoke, they led Yi Fei into Little Witch City. Thanks to these sorcerers, the guards did not even question Yi Fei's unfamiliar face. Yi Fei entered Little Witch City smoothly and was led to the Ancestral Sorcerer Temple by this group of enthusiastic bronze sorcerers. Only then did he realize what was going on. Little Witch City was similar to the City of Trials in the human tribe's impregnable pass. It was a place where newcomers gathered. Only in Little Witch City, the sorcerers who passed the test could officially head to the human tribe's impregnable pass and fight with the human tribe. Of course, to prevent spies from sneaking in, Little Witch City also built a temple. However, it was not the sorcerer god that was worshipped, but the 12 ancestral sorcerers that the sorcerer tribe worshipped. This made Yifei secretly worried. After all, he was not a real sorcerer tribe member. If the ancestral sorcerer temple found any loopholes, he would be done for. However, he had to go to the ancestral sorcerer temple. After all, only by being recognized by the ancestral sorcerer temple could he move freely in Little Witch City and find out about the sorcerer tribe's marriage. Thinking of this, Yifei's eyes became determined. Fight! Anyway, there is no place for me in the human tribe's battlefield. Other than finding a way to join the sorcerer tribe and sabotage the marriage plan between the sky god and the sorcerer tribe, I have no other way out. Holy Masters, what should I do when I reach the ancestral sorcerer temple? Yifei asked carefully as he secretly observed the situation in the ancestral sorcerer temple. He realized that this place was similar to the human tribe's temple. However, the sorcerer tribe priests who came and went were all very powerful. Their mental nebulas even formed all kinds of strange phenomena behind them. Some of them were even about to form innate divine demons. Many junior magi, like Yifei, also came to the ancestor Magus temple. After all, the mental strength of the sorcerer tribe was naturally strong. Therefore, even a sorcerer who had just condensed his spirit, could use sorcery to borrow the power of heaven and earth and possess the combat strength of an emperor-to-be. If a sorcerer could condense a mental nebula, it would be easy for him to fight against 3 martial emperors. However, even though the sorcerer tribe was innately strong, they were not strong enough after birth. For example, once a martial artist reached the level of a demigod or an Einherjar, they would also understand the laws of heaven and earth. The advantage of the wizards would disappear, and the combat power of both sides would be equal. At the sovereign level, the combat power of a martial artist would surpass that of a sorcerer. A martial artist, earthly venerable, would be able to defeat 3 sorcerer deities. Therefore, even though the human gods and divine gods were the only 2 supreme experts on the battlefield of the human tribe, many sorcerer gods of the sorcerer tribe were still a loss. They could only use their advantage in numbers to suppress the human tribe, but they still couldn't break through the human tribe's impregnable fortress. I guess this is also the reason why the sorcerer tribe wants to marry the divine gods. A head-on battle would only result in both sides suffering. Instead, the best choice is to subdue the enemy without fighting. However, the human tribe can't let down our guard. Yifei suddenly remembered what the heaven and earth venerables had told him. The sorcerer tribe was nothing to worry about. What was really frightening was actually the Dark Lord standing behind the sorcerer tribe. This was a real celestial venerable, a terrifying existence that had escaped from the heaven realm. The only thing that Yifei felt fortunate was that the Dark Lord was injured and had been in a deep sleep to heal his injuries. He couldn't personally attack the human tribe's impregnable fortress. Therefore, the Dark Lord controlled the sorcerer tribe to attack the human tribe's impregnable fortress through the sorcerer tribe. This could be considered a great fortune in the misfortune of the human tribe's battlefield. After all, if a celestial venerable were to attack, no matter how strong the human tribe's impregnable fortress was, it would definitely not be able to withstand the celestial venerable's attack. Boy, the 12 ancestral gods are in front of you. Hurry up and choose the ancestral god to worship. The ancestral god will examine your identity and bestow upon you the blessing of the sorcerer tribe. While Yifei was thinking, the bronze sorcerers had unknowingly brought him to the 12 tall deity statues. These were the statues of the 12 ancestral sorcerers. It was said that the 12 ancestral sorcerers were all innate divine demons and were the origin of the sorcerer tribe. Therefore, every sorcerer tribe respected the ancestral sorcerers from the bottom of their hearts. Before Yifei arrived, the 12 ancestral sorcerers were already crowded with junior sorcerers who had come to worship. These junior sorcerers had come from their respective continents to participate in the war. Most of them were very young, some were only 11 or 12 years old. They were comparable to the strength of the human tribe's quasi-emperors. From this, it could be seen how powerful the sorcerer tribe was. Moreover, not only were there junior sorcerers, Yifei also saw many half-sorcerers and even human tribe martial artists in the temple. However, their status was very low. They were either servants or slaves. Ha! We have finally arrived at the ancestral sorcerer temple. I am Jinwu from the Tianfeng tribe. I am willing to sacrifice 100 livestock to worship the ancestral god. May the ancestral god bless my Tianfeng tribe for generations to come and for our name to last forever. Just as Yifei was hesitating about which ancestral sorcerer to worship, the laughter of an arrogant young man suddenly came from the front of the ancestral sorcerer Dijiang's statue. His laughter quickly attracted the attention of many sorcerers. Look, it is Jin Wu from the Tianfeng tribe. It is said that his father has reached the limit of a grand sorcerer. Within 1,000 years, there is a great possibility that he will become a sorcerer deity. No wonder. I reckon that only the great nobles of the Tianfeng tribe can sacrifice 100 martial emperors to worship the ancestral god at once. The Tianfeng tribe had 100 martial emperors? Yifei's expression suddenly changed. Of course, he knew about the Tianfeng tribe. Shangjiu had once come from the Tianfeng tribe. However, Yifei was not shocked by this. Instead, he was shocked by Jin Wu's words and the 100 human tribe martial artists who had been let out like livestock. What's going on? Didn't you say that you were going to sacrifice livestock? Why are there martial emperors from the human tribe? Yifei's expression was extremely gloomy. As he was too agitated, Yifei's tone was slightly louder. This attracted the strange gazes of many sorcerers. A few bronze sorcerers who were standing beside Yifei quickly kicked Yifei secretly. Then, they gathered around and greeted the sorcerers. Senior brothers, this little brat is a new refugee. Therefore, he does not know the rules. Refugee? So he is a homeless person whose tribe has been destroyed. No wonder he does not know etiquette. Chapter 1855. Following Jin Wu's order, 100 priests in robes walked over with large swords in their hands. Yifei's eyes flashed with deep hostility and killing intent. He had an impulse. As the human emperor, he could not watch these human martial emperors being treated like livestock. They were being sacrificed. However, his rationality told him that if he showed any abnormality at this time, he would attract the attention of the sorcerer tribe and expose his identity. Crack! The crisp sound of a blade cutting into bone could be heard in front of the statue of ancestor sorcerer Dijiang. Then, countless sorcerers cheered enthusiastically and excitedly. Jinwu was especially excited. As the martial emperors were killed one by one and sacrificed to the ancestor sorcerer, the statue of ancestor sorcerer Dijiang suddenly emitted a bright light. It formed a golden vortex and suddenly swallowed Jinwu and everything around him. This caused countless sorcerers to cheer excitedly. At this time, countless fanatical sorcerers cheered and knelt down in front of the statue of ancestor Dijiang. The ancestor sorcerer has appeared. The ancestor sorcerer has appeared. I wonder how powerful the ancestor sorcerer's blessings will be through this sacrifice. Needless to say, the sacrifice of 100 martial emperors is a rare sight. I can guarantee that the ancestor Jin Wu will be able to condense a golden treasure and obtain the qualification to break through to the senior sorcerer level. In the end, even the group of bronze sorcerers who brought Yifei to the divine hall began to discuss excitedly. Yifei's face was as cold as steel as he looked at all of this coldly. However, he felt as if his heart had been ruthlessly stabbed with a knife. His heart was bleeding. This was the sorcerer tribe. Outside the city, he felt the passion of the sorcerer tribe. Now, in the divine hall, he felt the cruelty of the sorcerer tribe even more. I finally understand why the hidden god temple tried so hard to destroy the marriage between the sky god and the sorcerer tribe. Yifei took a deep breath. Then he no longer looked at the crazy sorcerers and walked towards the 12 statues of the ancestor sorcerer. He was enduring, and he had to endure. I must not be impulsive. At the very least, when I have no strength, I must learn to be patient. Patience is not weakness, but to make me stronger. Yifei finally walked in front of the statue of the ancestor sorcerer Hoodoo. It was an almost perfect female ancestor sorcerer. However, Hoodoo's body was still filled with a tyrannical and terrifying aura, just like the other ancestor sorcerer ancestor statue. When it sensed Yifei's approach, the statue of the ancestor sorcerer seemed to come to life. Hoodoo's bodies as Hoodoo as sorcerer ancestor sorcerer. Suddenly, an extremely terrifying pressure fell on Yifei's body. Originally, at this moment, most of the magi who were worshipping would immediately kneel down to express their reverence for the ancestral magus and pray for the ancestral magus blessings. However, after seeing the bloody and cruel scene just now, the ancestral magus had no choice but to kneel. Although Yifei didn't make a move, his heart was filled with boundless anger and murderous intent. It's all because of these ancestral sorcerers. If you didn't do the ancestral sorcerer's blessing, Jinwu wouldn't have slaughtered human warriors like livestock. So what if you're ancestral sorcerers? We warriors fight against the heavens and the earth, slaying gods and demons. We have never been afraid of this world. So why should we be afraid of you ancestral sorcerers? You want me to kneel? I won't. Because he was lost in thought, Yifei's body actually stood even straighter under the mountain-like pressure like a sharp sword. His face was like iron, and his heart was like blood. Just like that, Yifei looked straight into the strange eyes in the void. Then, he felt the pressure around him become more and more terrifying. In the beginning, there was only one pair of eyes staring at him. However, as Yifei fell into a daze, and a strong determination rose from the bottom of his heart, the number of pairs of eyes in the void suddenly increased to 2, 3, 4, until there were 12 pairs of eyes staring at Yifei in unison. Some of the gazes were dignified, some cold, some curious, and some mysterious. When they all gathered together, Yifei's body suddenly emitted a huge boom. It was as if 12 terrifying mountains were pressing down on his body at the same time. Only then did Yifei come to his senses. The massacre just now had a huge impact on him. He didn't realize that he had made a huge mistake. He actually stood in front of the ancestral sorcerers without kneeling, and this attracted the attention of all the sorcerers. Originally, these sorcerers were paying attention to the strange phenomenon of Jinwu's sacrifice. But when they saw that Yifei could withstand the gaze of 12 ancestral sorcerers and still stand without kneeling, these sorcerers couldn't help but widen their eyes in shock. What's wrong with that little sorcerer? How can he withstand the gaze of 12 ancestral sorcerers' eyes at the same time? Something's not right. His spiritual energy. How can it be gold? That seems to be the legendary golden treasure. Boom! Under the gaze of the 12 ancestral sorcerers' eyes, Yifei couldn't use his inner yuan, and the pressure was like that of an innate fiend god. It even forced out the golden spirit sea in Yifei's mind. A bright phenomenon began to appear behind Yifei. It was a golden ocean that was surging and roaring. Above the ocean, 12 sun-like eyes were coldly sizing up Yifei. This shocked Yifei, and he suddenly felt that all his secrets were about to be seen through. It was an illusion. But at this moment, Yifei suddenly felt that the invisible divine battle robe in his body was emitting a strange energy wave. It actually allowed him to withstand the piercing of these 12 eyes. In the end, these are just ancestral sorcerers' god statues, and not innate fiend gods like the real ancestral sorcerers. Yifei suddenly understood, and at the same time his heart calmed down, just as he controlled his emotions and was about to stop while he was ahead and kneel down. The moment the 12 eyes forced out Yifei's golden spirit sea, they suddenly turned into 12 golden whirlpools and rushed to swallow Yifei. This scene caused countless magi to be horrified. Heavens, who was that kid? He actually received the blessings of all 12 ancestral gods at the same time. A golden spirit sea, that seems to be the legendary golden treasure, the most powerful treasure that can break through the sorcerer god. What golden treasure? Damn it, Why did he trigger the ancestral sorcerer's blessings at this moment? Doesn't he know that his actions will interrupt my ancestral sorcerer's blessings? Chapter 1856. One must know that there were different grades of divine treasures. From the lowest to the highest, there were green divine treasures, silver divine treasures, gold divine treasures, and the legendary gold divine treasures. Correspondingly, there were green-skinned warlocks, silver-skinned warlocks, and gold-skinned warlocks, who were of an even higher level. The stone-skinned warlock god. Originally, with Jin Wu's talent, even if he didn't hold a sacrifice, he could easily turn his ordinary green divine treasure into a silver divine treasure with the help of the power of the ancestral sorcerer that existed in the unseen world when he received the blessing of the ancestral sorcerer. He could then turn his ordinary green divine treasure into a silver divine treasure and cultivate into a silver-skinned sorcerer. However, as a noble son of the heavenly wind tribe, Jin Wu was not satisfied with just becoming a silver-skinned sorcerer. Therefore, he paid a high price to find 100 martial emperors of the human race to perform a blood sacrifice. He hoped to borrow more power from the ancestral sorcerer statue so that he could directly become a silver-skinned sorcerer. He could become a gold divine treasure that could break through the gold-skinned sorcerer. Jin Wu did not expect that when he was full of himself and was about to succeed, Yi Fei would suddenly interfere and forcefully interrupt his ancestral sorcerer's blessing. All of his hard work had gone down the drain. Jin Wu was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of silver blood. Then, his silver divine treasure went berserk. Inside the 12 golden vortexes, Yi Fei did not know that his actions would inadvertently interrupt Jin Wu's ancestral sorcerer's blessing. In fact, when the 12 ancestral sorcerer's blessing were given at the same time, Yi Fei was also shocked. He almost thought that he had exposed himself. Fortunately, although he was being engulfed by the golden whirlpools of the 12 ancestral sorcerers, he did not feel any pressure as heavy as a mountain. On the contrary, he could feel the 12 mysterious energies rapidly merging with the golden spirit sea in his mind. During the process of fusion, a memory that did not belong to Yi Fei gradually emerged from the depths of his mind. In the end, these memories even condensed into a stalwart figure that sat silently in his spirit sea. Seeing this figure, Yi Fei could not help but be shocked. Shangjiu, how is this possible? Back then, I clearly broke free from the fusion of your memories. You should have been completely dead by now. How could you still appear in front of me? The tall and sturdy silhouette finally faced Yi Fei. That was a half-petrified magus, looking exactly like Shangjiu. Shangjiu sat above Yi Fei's golden spirit power with his legs crossed and said coldly, "You won't know how magical magic can be if you haven't learned any magic. I died in heaven and earth, yet it still lives in your memories." You must be very confused as to why you can still remember a lot of common knowledge about the shamans, even though you failed to fuse with my memories, right? Yi Fei's expression changed. How could he not understand that the changes in his mind and the memories of the sorcerer tribe were all caused by Shangjiu? Moreover, after so many years, Shangjiu was still hiding in his memory. God knows how many secrets he had seen. Yi Fei's face suddenly became very ugly, and he felt a chill run down his spine. Just like what Shangjiu had said, it was very difficult for him to understand the horror of magic and all kinds of unimaginable methods without learning any magic. But soon, Yi Fei forced himself to calm down. The living Shangjiu was very scary, but the dead Shangjiu only had a memory left. If he could hurt him, he would have done it long ago. Why would he wait until now? Tell me, what are you trying to do by using magic to hide in my memory? Yi Fei said in a deep voice. You know what I want to do. Shangjiu also stared coldly at Yi Fei. Yi Fei smiled bitterly. He had fused with Shangjiu's memories before, so of course, he knew what Shangjiu wanted to do. The woman he loved the most was killed by his half-brother. He was the son of the tribe leader, but he was reduced to a slave and lived a miserable life. But even so, Shangjiu still persevered and walked on the path of a magus. But when he realized that even if he became a gold magus, He couldn't revive the only woman he loved. In despair, Shang Jio walked on the path of revenge. He wanted to kill the father who shamed him, the brother who humiliated him and destroyed the grave of the woman he loved the most in front of him. But the Heavenly Wind Tribe was too strong, and Shang Jio's revenge failed in the end. He had no choice but to drag his severely injured body and escape from the Sorcerer Tribe. He came to the human tribe and established the Shang clan, creating the Great Void technique. But Shang Jio was not satisfied. Even when he established the Shang clan, he only wanted revenge. He also hoped that there would be a genius among the descendants of the Shang clan who could fuse with his memories and become another Shang Jio, continuing his path of revenge. Coincidentally, Yi Fei entered the Shang clan's sorcerer world at that time and unintentionally passed the test set by Shang Jio. In the end, he was almost fused with Shang Jio's memories and became another Shang Jio, a Shang Jio who was bent on revenge. At that time, I used the Undying Sword Soul to forcefully shatter Shang Jio's memory sorcery and break free. I don't know if I could destroy the last memory that Shang Jio hid in my mind if I activate the Undying Sword Soul now. Yi Fei's expression changed, and he kept calculating in his heart. Shang Jio stared coldly at Yi Fei. The Undying Sword Soul in your body is indeed powerful. But back then, you were able to break my memory sorcery because you were in my memory and could do whatever you wanted. But now, it's not you in my memory, it's me in your memory. If you break my memory, it's equivalent to breaking your own memory. If you won't lose all your memories, forget Zhao Yu, forget everything you've experienced. You can activate the Undying Sword Soul. You're threatening me. I hate being threatened the most. Yi Fei suppressed his anger and felt his hair stand on end. If Shang Jio even knew about the Undying Sword Soul, what other trump card did he have to deal with this crazy, vengeful great sorcerer? You can understand this as a threat, but I just want to borrow your hand to help me take revenge. You've experienced my memories and naturally understand what kind of feelings I have for Xiao Yu'er. She's my everything. If she's alive, I'll live. If she's dead, I won't be able to revive her, and I'll be dead. Even if I use sorcery to live in your memory, what you see isn't the real me. I'm just a walking corpse. Yi Fei's vision changed. What appeared in front of him was no longer that brilliant great sorcerer, but a skeleton, a bloody, skinless corpse. At the same time, Shang Jio's last memory in the Tianfeng tribe appeared in Yi Fei's mind. At that time, Shang Jio was surrounded by hundreds of gold-ranked great sorcerers from the Tianfeng tribe. He fought back and killed until blood flowed like a river. His killing caused the entire Tianfeng tribe to tremble in fear. However, the only thing Shang Jio didn't fight back was his father. He allowed the tribe leader of the Tianfeng tribe to activate sorcery and peel off his great sorcerer's golden skin. Then, Shang Jio's bloodied face revealed a sad and cold smile. Father, I'll return what I owe you. But what you owe me, I'll definitely take back. Chapter 1857. However, there was no point in regretting it. The hatred had already been formed. Father and son had turned against each other. From now on, they would not rest until one of them was dead. However, Shang Jio did not manage to wait for that day to come. He realized that even though he had broken through to the sorcerer god level and reached the limit of this world, even though he had cultivated sorcery to an unprecedented level, he could not resurrect his lover. He could not even see her again. The last thing Yi Fei saw was Shang Jio burying himself in despair the moment he broke through to the sorcerer god level. We cannot be together when we are alive, but when we die, we can return to this world together, Shang Jio murmured. In the end, he created a sorcerer world with his own hands and buried himself. His entire body gradually petrified and turned into the huge stone statue that Yi Fei had seen before. Shang Jio was indeed dead. He died in this world, but his hatred did not die. His memories did not die. Therefore, he used the most mysterious memory sorcery to keep himself alive in Yi Fei's memories. In the end, when Yi Fei entered the ancestral sorcerer temple and received the ancestral sorcerer's blessing, Shang Jio's memories. His memories were awakened once again. Yi Fei finally saw Shang Jio's final ending. He could not tell if he was upset or something else, but he understood Shang Jio's pain and sympathized with him. But understanding does not mean that I agree with you. Sympathizing does not mean that I have to work for you. Why should I avenge you? Yi Fei was very unhappy. In a human battlefield, Wang Bai made him the human emperor for no reason. Yi Fei tolerated it. Then, in the ancestral sorcerer temple, Shang Jio forcefully dragged him away to take his revenge. Yi Fei would definitely not tolerate it if it was forced upon him. Shang Jio lived for the love in his heart, while Yi Fei lived for the freedom in his heart. Shang Jio said coldly and stubbornly, "You passed my test and merged with my memories. Then you must avenge me. Helping me is helping yourself if you want to live to see Zhao Yu again." Yi Fei's eyes were suddenly filled with murderous intent. "Shang Jio, what do you mean? You better explain yourself." Shang Jio sneered. "You think I want to harm Zhao Yu? You underestimate me too much. Although you and I are from different races, we are very similar in some aspects. This is also the reason why I chose you." "All right, is the hidden god battle robe still useful?" Yi Fei's expression changed. "Shang Jio, what do you mean?" At Shang Jio's level of strength, Yi Fei would not speak nonsense. Now that Shang Jio had suddenly mentioned the invisible god battle robe, Yi Fei suddenly felt an inexplicable panic in his heart. Could it be that there's something wrong with the hidden god battle robe? Yi Fei's heart sank. Shang Jio also quickly sensed the change in Yi Fei's mood. He sneered, "You're still too naive. Do you really think that a simple half-venerable artifact can conceal your human bloodline? You underestimate us adepts too much. Since I can become your memory, I can become the sorcerer god for others. However, I have a way to see through your soul. Therefore, in this world, the only thing that cannot be seen through by the sorcerer god is the witchcraft itself. Do you understand what I mean?" "Hiss!" Yi Fei gasped. Of course, he understood what Shang Jio meant. The only thing that could hide from the sorcerer god was the witchcraft itself. This was the same principle as how people could not see the darkness under the light when they were under the light. This was the darkness under the light. That is to say, this hidden god battle robe, besides being a half-venerable artifact, also hides some kind of hidden sorcerer technique that can hide from the sorcerer god and the eyes of the ancestral sorcerer. Yi Fei's expression was extremely ugly. Although he did not want to believe Shang Jio's words, when he was stared at by the 12 ancestral sorcerers, he did feel that the hidden god battle robe had released an unusual power that allowed him to hide from the eyes of the ancestral sorcerer. Originally, Yi Fei thought that it was the power of the half-venerable artifact. However, after Shang Jio's reminder, he was shocked to discover that the power was most likely some kind of strange witchcraft. However, this battle robe was given to me by Zhao Shunjian under the orders of the earthly venerable hidden god. The hidden god palace is also a hidden force of the human tribe. They are all humans, so how could they use witchcraft? Furthermore, it's a mysterious witchcraft that can even hide from the sorcerer god. Yi Fei's mood gradually sank. Shang Jio's face was filled with a cold smile. "Now, I'm just a part of your memory. You haven't seen earthly venerable hidden god, so I can't help you analyze why he would hide it from you. However, there's one thing I'm sure of. The function of this sorcery is not just to hide your spirit. The key point is that this witchcraft can also devour your soul, shatter it, and scatter it." Yi Fei's expression changed drastically. He looked coldly at Shang Jio and said, "Do you think I'll believe what you're saying?" Shang Jio shook his head. "I don't need you to believe me. I just want you to promise me that you'll avenge me and destroy the damned heavenly wind tribe for me. Promise me that you won't let the tragedy between me and little you will repeat itself. Finally, I'll use the last of my strength to help you resolve the hidden dangers of the hidden god battle robe." Hearing this, Yi Fei had a vague feeling that something was wrong. However, before he could ask any more questions, Shang Jio's body and his spirit suddenly burst into flames, forming a ball of burning sorcerer god's fire. It fiercely rushed toward the hidden god battle robe in Yi Fei's body. Roar! At this moment, Yifei was shocked to discover that an evil and terrifying roar was coming from within his hidden god battle robe. That sound seemed to come from the endless hell of time and space. Under the burning of Shang Jiu's sorcerer god's fire, it let out a painful and angry roar. However, this roar quickly disappeared. At the same time, the last memory that Shang Jiu had left in Yifei's mind also disappeared. Shang Jiu's last words rang in Yifei's ears. I've resolved the hidden dangers of the hidden god battle robe. The weapon spirit in the battle robe has been demonized by someone and turned into a sorcerer spirit. You have to be careful. Also, thank you for allowing me to return to the sorcerer tribe. You have also allowed me to finally see the hope of revenge, the power of despair, the sovereign divine body, and the golden divine treasure that I left for you. Jin Shi, my brother, I hope you'll like this generous gift that I prepared for you. He. Shang Jiu's voice became deeper and deeper. There was an indescribable madness and hatred in his voice. However, Yifei's heart was heavy. He could feel that Shang Jiu was completely dead. Not only had he died in this world, but he had also died in his memories. Now, I can't even find a reason to refuse to avenge him. After all, Shang Jiu used his life to save mine. Zhao, Shunjian, hidden god sovereign, who was trying to harm me. They went through so much trouble to send me into the lonely mountain ridge. What is their motive? Yifei's consciousness stood in the middle of the golden sea of consciousness. This was the final golden treasure that Shang Jiu had left him. With this treasure, he would be able to smoothly cultivate to the sorcerer deity level without any bottlenecks. This was the same principle as the innate martial gods of the human tribe. As long as he cultivated, he would definitely become a martial god. This was the terrifying potential of an innate martial god. Chapter 1858. I didn't expect that Shang Jiu would not only sacrifice himself for revenge, but also give me all his cultivation memories. Now I owe Shang Jiu a huge favor. This favor can only be repaid with Jin Shi's head. Jin Shi was Shang Jiu's half-brother, who was also the murderer of little Yu Er. In Shang Jiu's memories, Yifei had seen with his own eyes how Jin Shi had stepped on little Yu Er's tombstone in an extremely humiliating manner. He had also made Shang Jiu a slave and humiliated him. Such hatred, along with the inheritance of Shang Jiu's memories, made Yifei's heart involuntarily produce an inexplicable murderous intent. Shang Jiu, don't worry. I'll avenge you. Yifei thought silently in his heart, and his gaze became resolute. As he made up his mind, the cultivation memories that originally belonged to Shang Jiu suddenly turned into a tide and merged perfectly with Yifei's memories. Yifei did not resist this time. After all, these were only Shang Jiu's cultivation memories and not his emotional memories. Even if he merged these memories, he would not become Shang Jiu, but he would have all of Shang Jiu's cultivation memories. It would be difficult for a warrior to do such a thing. However, Shang Jiu was best at memorizing sorcery, so Yifei easily turned these memories into his own memories. Memories. When Yifei opened his eyes again, there was a hint of vicissitudes in his eyes. After merging these cultivation memories, it was as if he had cultivated for countless years on the path of a sorcerer. I see. The biggest difference between a sorcerer and a warrior is that they do not have to go through the tribulation. As long as the level of the divine treasure and sorcery reaches a certain level, a sorcerer can easily advance. This means that now that I have the golden divine treasure, as long as I want to, I can quickly break through the ranks of Grand Sorcerer, Sorcerer God, and become a martial god. Realm. After flipping through these memories, Yifei suddenly became excited. Ever since he found out that the hidden god battle robe had been tampered with, Yifei did not dare to have high expectations for the hidden god temple. He also did not dare to rely on the power of the hidden god, Earth Venerable, to save Xiaoyu. However, without the support of the hidden god temple, it would be extremely difficult for him to return to the impregnable pass of the human tribe, let alone save Xiaoyu. Yifei was also very worried at one time. However, after looking through Shang Jiu's cultivation memories, Yi Fei no longer worry. After all, relying on someone else's powers in his own hands was more reliable. The 12, 12, 12, 12 golden, 12, 12, 12, 12, 12, 12, 12, 12, 12, 12, 12, 12, 12, 12, 12s. After all, one's is. It would allow Yi Fei to cultivate his sorcery in peace and break through to the rank of Grand Sorcerer in a year's time. However, to break through to the rank of Grand Sorcerer, there are two conditions that must be met. One is to cultivate the Golden Divine Treasure, which is the foundation for breaking through to the rank of Grand Sorcerer. After all, the higher the level of the sorcery, the stronger the mental strength required. Sorcery is divided into 5 levels from weak to strong. They're the most basic, white and blue. Sorcery is divided into Grand Sorcery, Green Sorcery, Silver Sorcery, Gold Sorcery, and Divine Sorcery that can only be performed by sorcerer gods. Therefore, to break through to the rank of Grand Sorcerer, a sorcerer must not only cultivate divine treasures that are not lower than the Gold Divine Treasure, but also master at least one gold-level sorcery to be called a Grand Sorcerer. I just don't know how many gold-level sorcery there are in Shang Jiao's cultivation memories. Yi Fei was very curious. With a jolt of his mind, a mysterious sorcery appeared in his mind. A mysterious spell had automatically appeared in his mind. The name of this spell was very strange as well. It was actually called Battle Shaman. Moreover, in Shang Jiao's memories, this was the only sorcery technique that he had left for Yi Fei. This made Yi Fei very surprised. I've heard of the body of the war demon and the body of the war god, but I've never heard of the body of the battle sorcerer. Don't all sorcerers use sorcery to battle? Don't tell me there are sorcerers who can fight in close quarters like warriors? Fight? Yi Fei could not help but have a strong interest in this body of the battle sorcerer. At the same time, he knew very well that since Shang Jiao was bent on revenge, the sorcery that he had left for him would definitely be the strongest. Obviously, the memory sorcery was not Shang Jiao's strongest sorcery. Shang Jiao's strongest sorcery should be this body of the battle sorcerer. Body of the sorcerer. A golden vortex formed by an ancestral sorcerer's blessing could last for an entire month, and Yi Fei had received a total of 12 ancestral sorcerer's blessings. In other words, Yi Fei could now use a year to cultivate this body of the battle sorcerer. Not to mention, Yi Fei still had the undying sword soul in his body, which could infinitely increase his comprehension. In his mind, he still had Shang Jiao's lifetime of cultivation experience, which could be used as a reference at any time to clear his doubts. No matter how difficult this body of the battle sorcerer was to understand, Yi Fei was shocked to discover that he had miraculously only used a short 3 months to completely comprehend this body of the battle sorcerer. It was only when he comprehended this sorcery that Yi Fei realized how crazy the sorcery that Shang Jiao had left for him was. This was because this body of the battle sorcerer could actually be cultivated into the body of the ancestral sorcerer. And the ancestral sorcerer was an innate god fiend. He was the strongest god that had appeared in the world when the world existed. Of course, unlike other innate god fiends, it was said that the ancestral sorcerer's strongest point was his physical body. Even if the world was destroyed, the ancestral sorcerer's physical body would remain indestructible. It was a true body of eternal, indestructible. The body of the battle sorcerer that Shang Jiao had left behind was created to cultivate a physical body that was comparable to the ancestral sorcerer's. It was the strongest body tempering technique of the sorcerer tribe, and it even surpassed the body of the battle sorcerer. In the end, Yi Fei's body of the battle sorcerer could only cultivate his physical body to be comparable to a divine artifact. Even if he merged with the Azure divine body and cultivated the sovereign divine body of the human tribe's 10 great divine bodies, it would only allow him to break through to the sovereign realm. That was already the limit. However, the body of the battle sorcerer was different. In Yi Fei's opinion, this sorcery had already far surpassed the level of a god-level sorcery. It was even more crazy than the 8-level heavenly dragon that Yi Fei had mastered. This body of the battle sorcerer has a total of 12 levels. When you master the first 3 levels, your physical body will be comparable to a divine artifact. At the 4th level, your physical body will be comparable to a half-venerable artifact. At the 5th level, you will be a real venerable artifact. Even a heavenly venerable would find it difficult to break through such a physical body. Could it be that Shang Jiao actually intends to rely on the strength of his physical body alone? He's going to break through to become a heavenly venerable in the earth domain. When Yifei thought of this possibility and saw how crazy the body of the battle sorcerer was, he couldn't help but inwardly gasp. Besides feeling that Shang Jiao was too crazy, he was also shocked by the strength of the body of the battle sorcerer. Chapter 1859. To cultivate the body of the battle shaman, the most important thing is to fuse nomological laws. The more nomological laws you fuse, the stronger the body of the battle shaman. The first 3 levels are the easiest and are considered the most basic parts of the body of the battle shaman. You only need to fuse 1 nomological law to cultivate the first level. Fusing 3 nomological laws will allow you to cultivate the first 3 levels and allow your body to reach a level comparable to a divine artifact. The truly insane part is the 4th level. The number of nomological laws you need to fuse is actually 4. The 5th level, 5, 6, and so on. When you fuse the 12th level, you actually need a total of 12 nomological laws. Even Yi Fei's current strongest heavenly venerate technique only required 8 nomological laws to master. Even so, he was able to fool the 2 earthly venerates, man-god and heaven-god. Just the number of nomological laws required to cultivate the body of the battle shaman was enough to make Yi Fei feel dizzy and have the urge to vomit blood after carefully calculating it. In this world, heavenly venerate origins were extremely rare. Every time one comprehended a nomological law, they needed a heavenly venerate origin. Forget about several dozen laws. Even the 8 laws required to master the 8 extreme heavenly dragon, Yi Fei was unable to gather all of them, let alone several dozen. But there was no other way. The body of the battle shaman was so tempting and insane. It was comparable to the body of an ancestral wizard. Just thinking about it made Yi Fei extremely excited. If he could cultivate it, he could challenge the dark heavenly venerable with just his body alone, let alone the heavenly tribulation of despair. Therefore, even though he knew that the body of the battle shaman was 100 times harder to cultivate than the 8-level heavenly dragon, Yi Fei still gritted his teeth and decided to cultivate it with tears in his eyes. Besides, other than this body of the battle shaman, he had no other sorcery to cultivate. He couldn't be like Xiao Qiao and the dragon turtle, who ate spirit stones and went to sleep. Of course, Xiao Qiao hadn't slept yet. Seeing that Yi Fei was about to cultivate again, Xiao Qiao and the dragon turtle, who understood how crazy Yi Fei was when he cultivated, hurriedly ate as many spiritual stones as they could. Otherwise, when Yi Fei cultivated to the state of selflessness, he would starve again. This was especially true for the dragon turtle. Ever since it had starved for half a year, the dragon turtle had learned a painful lesson. It would rather puff itself up into a ball than let go of a single spiritual stone. What should I do? Xiao Qiao and the dragon turtle are both eating spirit stones. If I don't eat them, I won't fit in. Ling Siki was in a dilemma. After all, she was a human. She didn't have such good teeth like the dragon turtle and Xiao Qiao. However, if she didn't eat and just watch Xiao Qiao and the dragon turtle eat, Ling Siki felt that it wasn't appropriate. Therefore, Ling Siki quickly thought of a way, which was to secretly take a few pieces and then silently start cultivating. At this moment, Yi Fei had no idea that another person seemed to have joined the ranks of his big spenders. It was just as Xiao Qiao and the dragon turtle had expected. Once he entered the state of cultivation, Yi Fei was undoubtedly very crazy. Very soon, He completely entered a state of enlightenment where he forgot about everything around him and began cultivating according to the method of the battle shaman's constitution. Boom! An invisible sword pressure suddenly erupted from Yi Fei's body. It was the aura of the rule of sword, which was also the first rule that Yi Fei had comprehended. However, when this rule appeared, Yi Fei immediately activated his mind power and formed a strange golden vortex. This vortex was very similar to the vortex blessed by the ancestral shaman, but it was many times weaker. This was Yi Fei's current golden divine treasure. Moreover, the higher the level of the divine treasure, the more terrifying the mind power released. Originally, according to the records of the battle shaman's constitution, it would take half a year to a year to cultivate the first level, even if one had the golden divine treasure. However, the mind power released by Yi Fei's golden divine treasure was too strong. Yi Fei was very surprised to discover that he had only used a little more than a month to completely integrate the rule of sword. Yi Fei was pleasantly surprised. That's great. I've mastered a total of 3 rules. If I continue cultivating at this speed, I might be able to cultivate the first 3 levels of the battle shaman's constitution before the ancestral shaman's blessing disappears. Then, I'll truly break through to the golden great shaman and possess battle prowess comparable to a martial god. Yi Fei was very excited. Even though he realized that the hidden god temple was not as trustworthy as Zhao Shunjian had said, Yi Fei still decided to follow the hidden god temple's arrangements and infiltrate the sorcerer tribe to assassinate the sorcerer tribe's relatives. However, this was no longer for the hidden god temple. It was for Zhao Yu and himself. After all, Zhao Yu was his woman. Yi Fei did not want to see his woman become a sacrifice for the sorcerer tribe's political marriage. Since the gods of heaven and earth were too guarded and could not take action in the divine temple to rescue Zhao Yu, the only thing Yi Fei could do was to follow the hidden god temple's arrangements and find an opportunity to assassinate the sorcerer tribe's relatives. The sorcerer tribe's relatives were all dead. It's easy to assassinate, but it's extremely difficult to get close to the target of the assassination. An ordinary sorcerer would definitely not stand chance. At the very least, I have to become a golden great shaman. Only then will I be able to gain a firm foothold in the sorcerer tribe. Yi Fei's eyes flashed with determination. Seeing that the rule of sword had been successfully integrated, Yi Fei did not hesitate and quickly released his rule of lightning. This was a rule that the heaven and earth venerables had bestowed upon him. It was also a very powerful attack rule. When Yi Fei integrated this rule into the body of the battle wizard, he instantly felt that his body seemed to have undergone some kind of miraculous change. It was as if the hidden treasures in his body had suddenly been opened by the body of the battle wizard. Yi Fei's mentality moved instinctively. Suddenly, countless sharp swords appeared on the ground where he was standing silently. They were densely packed and filled with murderous intent. This is the sorcerer art that comes with the body of the battle wizard. Yi Fei's face was filled with surprise. Only now did he realize that as the body of the battle wizard improved and the integration of the rule of lightning, he seemed to naturally produce some special abilities. It was also this ability that allowed Yi Fei to make countless swords appear on the ground with just a thought. Therefore, when Yi Fei had cultivated the second level of the body of the battle wizard, with another thought, the swords around him all disappeared with a whoosh. Violently tumbling purple lightning suddenly appeared in the sky above his head. It was like a heavenly tribulation. It was very shocking. Yi Fei was overjoyed. He took advantage of his current state of cultivation and spent another few months hurriedly integrating the last rule that he had comprehended, the rule of slaughter, into his body in one go. Boom! An extremely terrifying murderous intent suddenly erupted around Yi Fei. Then, this murderous intent actually formed a scarlet blood sword that floated behind Yi Fei. It was as if this blood sword would automatically fly out and behead someone with just a thought from Yi Fei. Moreover, with the completion of the third level of the body of the battle wizard, Yi Fei's entire skin actually shone with a dazzling golden light from the inside out. The last ray of light was like a scorching sun that shattered the remaining golden vortexes that surrounded Yi Fei. Chapter 1860. Boom! As Yi Fei broke through to become a gold wizard, countless wizards in the ancestral wizard temple couldn't help but discuss in surprise. It's the junior wizard who was blessed by the 12 ancestral wizards a year ago. I didn't expect him to become a gold wizard in just a year. It's so frustrating to compare wizards. If I had the gold treasure and the blessings of the 12 ancestral wizards, I'd definitely be able to break through to become a gold wizard and achieve more glory than him. Glory? You probably don't know that Prince Jin Wu of the Tianfeng tribe hates him to the core. Even if he has the gold treasure, he'll never be a match for Prince Jin Wu as long as he doesn't break through to become a wizard god. Obviously, many things had happened in the ancestral wizard temple during the year when Yi Fei received the blessings of the ancestral wizards and broke through to become a senior wizard. The most eye-catching thing was the feud between Yi Fei and Jin Wu. After all, Yi Fei had triggered the blessings of the 12 ancestral wizards a year ago. He had unintentionally interrupted Jin Wu's blessings and ruined Jin Wu's plan to break through to become a gold wizard. If Yi Fei was a prince from a big tribe, Jin Wu might have tolerated it. However, Yi Fei was a refugee who didn't even have a tribe. This made Jin Wu extremely angry. At the same time, the news that Yi Fei had the gold treasure spread like wildfire. Many big tribes had their eyes on him. However, no one expected Yi Fei to break through so quickly. A year ago, it was said that this person wasn't even a bronze wizard. A year later, this person actually became a gold great wizard. As expected of the legendary gold divine treasure that only appears once every 100,000 years. If I can bring this person back, I can be considered to have made up for my mistake. When Yi Fei broke through to become a senior wizard and rushed into the starry sky to release his power, a middle-aged man in a golden robe was standing on a tall building in the ancestral wizard temple. If Yi Fei was here, he would definitely recognize that this middle-aged man was the Gongzhu Grand Wizard that he had met a year ago. A year ago, Great Sorcerer Gongzhu was ordered by Great Sorcerer Qinliang to come to the lonely mountain range to search for the new human emperor who had escaped from the human tribe's impregnable pass. Sorcerer Gongzhu thought this was a sure thing. But what made him depressed was that no matter how many wizards he brought with him, they could not find the new emperor. Just as the great shaman was about to go back empty-handed to receive his punishment, news of the appearance of the golden god treasure suddenly spread out in the temple of the little shaman city. What made the great shaman ecstatic was that the one who had the golden god treasure was not the nobles of the big tribes, but just someone without any foundation. Homeless people. The great witch Gongzhu suddenly had an idea. He decided to take Yi Fei back and hand him over to Grand Magus Qinliang. In this way, he could make up for his mistake of not being able to catch the new king. Although Gongzhu shaman was fast, there was someone who moved even faster than him. That person was naturally Jin Wu. Almost at the same time that Yi Fei left the ancestral sorcerer temple and rushed into the starry sky, Jin Wu, who had been waiting in the crowd for a long time, suddenly had a look of intense jealousy and killing intent on his face. Boom! Without any warning, Jin Wu made his move. He stepped into the sky and used a void technique that was very similar to the Great Void Steps. Jin Wu stepped into the void and arrived in front of Yi Fei. He shouted in a deep voice, "Boy, do you still remember the enmity of the ancestral sorcerer temple a year ago? You're Jin Wu. What enmity do we have?" Yi Fei was baffled. Then his eyes turned cold. Even if there was enmity, it was Jin Wu who owed a blood debt to the 100 human martial emperors. Even though a year had passed, Yi Fei could not forget the 100 human martial emperors who had been killed by Jin Wu like livestock. A year ago, I did not have the ability to save them. But a year later, I can kill Jin Wu and avenge them. Jin Wu die. Boom! The scene of the 100 martial emperors dying a year ago seemed to appear in front of Yi Fei's eyes again. Yi Fei's body was filled with killing intent. Strong mental energy fluctuations made him burn like the sun. Then, A blazing golden divine sword pierced through the void and slashed at Jin Woo. "You're just a refugee. How dare you attack me?" Jin Woo's eyes were also filled with killing intent. Then, it turned into intense greed. Suddenly, a terrifying mental energy field appeared around him. As Jin Woo grabbed with his hand, the entire void seemed to shrink rapidly. It was about to fall into Jin Woo's palm. In the void. At the same time, Jin Woo wanted to use this hand to grab Yi Fei's body. It was as if he wanted to pull out the golden treasure from Yi Fei's body and make it his own. Hand of the void. Jin Woo waved his hands, and a blazing golden light burst out from his body. After a year, Jin Woo had broken through to become a gold great wizard, even though his blessing had failed. Many of the spectating adepts were shocked by this development. A gold great wizard? Didn't Jin Woo fail in his blessing? How did he break through to become a gold great wizard so quickly? It's not possible under normal circumstances. However, I've heard of an evil sorcery that can transplant other people's divine treasures into one's own body. This sorcery is too evil and has been banned by the sorcerer god. Jin Woo dares to openly violate the sorcerer god's ban. It seems like the rumor is true. It's very likely that Jin Shi is about to break through to become a sorcerer god. The wizards around the starry sky were discussing animatedly. Hearing this, Yi Fei was shocked. Then his eyes became extremely cold. So what if he's a sorcerer god? Even if he's a sorcerer god, I'll still kill him. Yi Fei's expression was resolute. Since he had already received great benefits from Shang Jiutian, he had to avenge Shang Jiutian and fulfill Shang Jiutian's final wish. Of course, before taking revenge on Jin Shi, as the human emperor, Yi Fei felt that it was even more necessary for him to avenge the 100 martial emperors who had died a year ago. As the human emperor, I will fight for the human tribe. I must kill this Jin Woo. Kill him. Yi Fei roared in his heart. However, his eyes were filled with coldness and merciless killing intent. Facing Jin Woo's hand of the void, Yi Fei activated his battle wizard body without hesitation. Instantly, Yi Fei's body began to emit endless divine light. It was as if his entire body had become a real divine artifact. Jin Woo's hand of the void grabbed Yi Fei's body. Not only did it fail to crush Yi Fei's body, but it was also forcefully repelled by an extremely strong spiritual pressure. Chapter 1861. Jin Woo was furious. The Grand Shaman of Gongju was shocked when he realized that Yi Fei had chosen the declining path of battle shaman with the golden treasure. It was extremely difficult to train one's physique in any race. In the sorcerer tribe, the path of a battle sorcerer was a path that only those small tribes with no resources would take. Normally, sorcerers with a little talent would choose the path of a spell sorcerer or a weapon sorcerer, which was easier to cultivate. Especially the latter two paths of shaman. Not only were they easier to train, but their attack power was at least 10 times stronger than that of battle shamans who only trained their physique. In the case of the same level, when battle shamans faced the other two paths of shaman, they could only passively take a beating. This was also the reason why Jin Woo was furious. Although he could use evil spells to seize Yi Fei's treasure and transplant it into his own body, he could not change the path of battle shaman that Yi Fei had already mastered. In this way, even if he seized the golden treasure, he would be forced to continue on Yi Fei's path. The path of battle shaman. Damned refugee, how dare you waste the golden treasure that I set my eyes on? You deserve to die. Die. Jin Woo roared. With a wave of his robe, he turned into a terrifying wild wolf king. He opened his huge mouth and suddenly swallowed Yi Fei and the space around him. He swallowed everything. Phantom Wolf. That's a spell that Grand Shaman Jin Woo created when he was young. It's extremely terrifying. It seems that young Master Jin Woo really wants to kill him. Sigh. That kid has no background, but has the golden treasure. Even if young Master Jin Woo doesn't attack, the nobles of the other large tribes won't let him go. It's a pity that he's a battle shaman. Not only are the spells of this path few in number, but they're also very weak. It seems that there has never been a battle shaman who broke through to sorcerer god. The surrounding shamans discussed animatedly. Even the grand shaman of Gongju shook his head secretly. Although the sorcerer gods had issued a joint order a long time ago to forbid the practice of evil spells and seizing other people's treasures, this was only an absolute restriction on the shamans of the small tribes. Among the nobles of the large tribes, seizing other people's high-level treasures to replace their own low-level treasures happened from time to time. However, it was the first time that Jin Wu had done something so public. When he was swallowed by the huge wolf, Yi Fei broke out in a cold sweat. After all, this was the first time he used witchcraft in a battle. He was a little worried about the strangeness of witchcraft. However, Yi Fei soon realized that his worries were unnecessary. Jin Wu's sorcery was indeed terrifying and could even devour the void. However, at the same time, it also had a fatal weakness, and that was that its range was too large. Even with the mental power of a gold wizard, it would be difficult for him to sustain it for too long. However, Jin Wu is indeed ruthless. He seems to have snatched the golden divine treasure of some senior gold-rank great magus. That's why he has an attack power that surpasses that of an ordinary gold-rank great magus. If the stalemate continues, even if my physical body is comparable to a divine weapon, I won't be able to hold on for too long. Crack. Just as Yi Fei was pondering, traces of cracks had already appeared on Yi Fei's battle wizard body due to the endless pressure from the wolf's mouth. At this moment, Jin Wu's figure also entered the void engulfed by the wolf's mouth. He looked down at Yi Fei from above like an ancestral wizard in a temple. He was filled with dignity and coldness as he stared at him. Refugee, don't resist. The more you resist, the faster you will die. Now, why don't you kneel down and give me your golden divine treasure? The gold god treasury, dig it out and get it to me. Even though he was furious that Yi Fei had chosen the path of the lowly battle wizard, a battle wizard who possessed a golden divine treasure still had a 50% chance of breaking through to the level of a sorcerer god. Jin Wu still didn't want to give up on the precious golden divine treasure in Yi Fei's body. As he spoke, Jin Wu's majestic mental power turned into a ghastly, ghostly hand and ruthlessly dug at Yi Fei's body. Sorcery, skinning ghostly claw. Once Shang Jiu had his senior mega skin peeled off by this move and was severely injured. Shang Jiu's memories flashed before Yi Fei's eyes once again. It was the bloody scene of Shang Jiu fighting against a group of sorcerers in the tribe. Suddenly, Shang Jiu was attacked by his father and skinned alive by himself. A shocking look of viciousness suddenly flashed across Yi Fei's eyes. It was clear that even though Shang Jiu had died, Shang Jiu's hatred still remained in Yi Fei's heart. It was also this hatred that caused Yi Fei to develop a bloodthirsty and crazy aura from the bottom of his heart. Kill! Yi Fei suddenly let out a demonic roar. As he roared, a blood-red sword floated behind Yi Fei. With Yi Fei's anger and murderous intent, the blood sword automatically turned into a blood-red glow without anyone's control. It cut through the heavens and the earth, and also cut through the engulfing giant wolf's mouth in the void. How is this possible? At the same level, battle sorcerers should be the weakest among the three major factions. What kind of blood sword is that? How can you destroy my sorcery? Die! Jin Wu was furious. As the void shattered, his terrifying ghostly hand continued to grab Yi Fei's head as if he wanted to crush Yi Fei. His head was going to dig out Yi Fei's golden treasure. Die! Yi Fei's eyes were bloodshot. As he raged, his blazing spirit sea suddenly churned with dazzling golden waves. The blood sword that was flying out was suddenly caught by Yi Fei. He was not good at sorcery, but in terms of combat and swordsmanship, Yi Fei was not afraid of any opponent at the same level. Hence, under the incredulous gazes of the sorcerers and grand sorcerers, Yi Fei raised the blood-red sword and slashed forward. A bloody sword of slaughter appeared between the heavens and the earth. This sword cut through the ghostly hand and shattered the void. Finally, Yi Fei let out another roar. He held the blood sword and traversed countless voids with a single step. The violent, murderous intent formed a terrifying bloody storm. In an instant, it completely engulfed Jin Woo's body. No, the void technique. How can you know the void technique? Jin Woo widened his eyes in horror. He suddenly regretted provoking Yi Fei. What made him even more terrified was that Yi Fei was clearly a refugee, but he had mastered the secret void technique, which only the nobles of the Heavenly Wind tribe could master. This secret technique caught Jin Woo off guard. He could only watch helplessly as the blood sword pierced through his forehead and into the back of his head. Boom! The moment the blood sword pierced through Jin Woo's head, Jin Woo's golden treasure was completely destroyed. Sorcerers did not have souls, only their minds. Once the treasure that represented their minds was destroyed, Jin Woo would become a corpse. Chapter 1862. There were strong and weak golden sorcerers as well. The more golden sorcery they mastered, the stronger the golden sorcerer would be. It was the same principle as a warrior who could perform multiple primordial celestial skills was definitely stronger than a warrior who could only perform one primordial celestial skill in the same realm. For example, Yi Fei and Jin Woo were newly promoted golden sorcerers. They only mastered one golden sorcery. Jin Woo's golden sorcery was the skinning ghost claw, while Yi Fei's was the blood sword floating behind him. They were at the bottom of the golden sorcerers. As for the Gongju sorcerer, he was a powerful sorcerer who had mastered multiple golden sorcery. According to Shang Jiu's cultivation memory, once a sorcerer mastered 12 golden sorcery, that sorcerer would be able to open the supreme door and step into the sorcerer realm. However, it was easy to cultivate one sorcery art, but it was extremely difficult to cultivate 12 golden sorcery arts. Many golden sorcerers could only cultivate one golden sorcery art in their entire lives, and that was the limit. Only those great sorcerers with great aptitude and powerful divine treasures could master more than one golden sorcery art. Such sorcerers were absolute experts in the sorcerer tribe. Their strength was comparable to a middle martial god or even an upper martial god of the human tribe. Yi Fei was shocked to find that the Gongju sorcerer was a powerful sorcerer who was comparable to a middle martial god through the observation of his spiritual energy. He was shocked. The sorcerer tribe really thinks highly of me. I'm only at the demigod realm, and the sorcerer tribe sent a middle martial god to kill me, the human emperor. However, it seems that the Gongju sorcerer didn't discover my human tribe identity. They looked at each other. The Gongju sorcerer didn't show any hostility. Instead, he nodded his head in a friendly manner. Yi Fei was relieved. He knew that although the hidden god temple had tampered with the hidden god battle robe, they hadn't lied to him. The hidden god battle robe could hide his identity perfectly. This kind of concealment was not as simple as making Yi Fei's divine soul disappear. Even Yi Fei's aura was completely changed. Therefore, even though Grand Shaman Gongju knew that Yi Fei was right in front of him, he could not see through him. Yi Fei was the new human sovereign that he could not find even if he dug 3 feet in the ground. On the contrary, when he saw that Yi Fei could kill Jin Woo as a battle sorcerer, the Gongju sorcerer sect, he was shocked. He exclaimed, "Battle sorcerer sect has such combat strength. Young master is dead. Jin Woo is dead. The sorcerer, golden sorcerer. Ye sorcerer had sorcerer, were sorcerer gold, were sorall sorcerer, was sorcerer age, sorcerer sorial. In particular, there was an old gold grand wizard among them. He was Jin Woo's servant and was equivalent to the guardian of the divine son of the divine palace. When he saw that Jin Woo had died in battle, this gold great sorcerer had already roared and wanted to rush into the starry sky from the shrine to fight Yi Fei to the death. However, when he heard Yi Fei say his name, this gold great sorcerer was so scared that he almost went crazy on the spot. He didn't even care about the dignity of a grand magus. He just crazily ran out of the ancestral Magus Temple and Little Magus City, as if he had encountered some great terror. Yifei certainly knew the reason why the great shaman was so scared. After all, Shang Jiao had killed so many people in the Heavenly Wind tribe that their blood flowed like a river. Almost all the gold great shamans of the older generation had been killed. In the end, Jinshi had paid a huge price to invite reinforcements from other tribes. Jinshi's father had even launched a sneak attack on Shang Jiao and forcefully stripped Shang Jiao of his grand Magus gold skin, causing Shang Jiao to be severely injured. The current Heavenly Wind tribe would not exist at all. Since then, Shang Jiao had become the biggest taboo of the Heavenly Wind tribe, and also the source of the fear of the older generation of Grand Magi. Of course, it was also Yi Fei's intention to reveal Shang Jiao's name. After all, Jin Wu was a great noble of the Heavenly Wind tribe. Yi Fei, a mere refugee, had killed Jin Wu, which was too shocking. The matter of the golden divine treasure would definitely alarm countless Grand Magi and even sorcerer gods. Instead of making up stories and giving himself away, he might as well reveal it directly. Revealing Shang Jiao's name also saved him a lot of trouble. Shang Jiao, you are the witch demon Shang Jiao. I'm Gong Zhu. I've heard a lot about Brother Shang. Hearing Yi Fei reveal his identity and seeing the terrified reaction of the Heavenly Wind tribe when they heard Shang Jiao's name. With Gong Zhu's identity and status as a Grand Magus, it was easy for him to find out all the grievances between Shang Jiao and the Heavenly Wind tribe. The last trace of doubt in Gong Zhu's heart disappeared like smoke. He immediately rushed into the starry sky with ecstasy and started chatting with Yi Fei. Yi Fei didn't reject Gong Zhu's invitation to befriend him and kill Jin Wu. It was just that he couldn't stand Jin Wu's disregard for human life and wanted to take revenge on the Heavenly Wind tribe for Shang Jiao. However, Yi Fei didn't forget his real purpose in coming to the sorcerer tribe, which was to destroy the peace marriage between the divine realm and the sorcerer tribe. In order to destroy this peace marriage, he had to get in touch with those Grand Magi who had power and status. Gong Zhu, the Grand Magus in front of him, was definitely the best way to break through. Yi Fei smiled and said, "Oh, it's the Grand Magus of Gong Zhu. Sorry for the disrespect." "Oh, Brother Shang, also know Gong Zhu? That's great. I won't say more. Now that Brother Shang has killed Jin Wu, you have completely offended Jin Shi. Brother Shang, I'm afraid you don't know that Jin Shi has at most 100 years to break through to the sorcerer god level. It's just a rumor to confuse the opponent." As Gong Zhu spoke, his eyes were fixed on Yi Fei's expression. Yi Fei didn't hide his shock. He then nodded and thanked Gong Zhu with a cold face. "Thank you for telling me, Grand Magus Gong. However, even if Jin Shi breaks through to the sorcerer god level, I will still kill him." Gong Zhu smiled and said, "Brother Shang, you don't have to rush to take revenge. You have the golden treasure, and it's only a matter of time before you break through to the sorcerer god level. To be honest, I never thought that a battle sorcerer could have such terrifying combat power. The blood sword you formed was even more shocking. If you don't mind, I am willing to recommend you. You can go and meet the Grand Magus Chunliang. Like you, the Grand Magus Chunliang was a refugee. I believe that the Grand Magus Chunliang will be very happy to see you." The Grand Magus Chunliang was the sorcerer tribe's title for the sorcerer god. Chapter 1863. Brother Shang, look, that's the golden palace where great venerable Chunliang lives. According to the rules of the Lonely Mountain Ridge, once you become a gold great wizard, you can enter the golden palace and receive personal guidance from the Lord. Great Wizard Gong Zhu said excitedly. The Lord was another form of respect for the wizard god. However, only those who were close to the wizard god could use this form of address. The great wizard Gong Zhu's sudden words were telling Yi Fei about his close relationship with the wizard god Chunliang. It's a pity that I was ordered to capture the new human emperor who escaped from the human tribe's impregnable pass, but I couldn't find him. I guess the new human emperor is probably hiding in the starry sky and doesn't dare to come out. The great wizard Gong Zhu was depressed every time he thought of this. Yi Fei's expression became very strange. He then pretended to be joking and said, "That's easy. Great Wizard Gongzhu, I'm actually the new human emperor. Why don't you tie me up and hand me over? The great wizard Qinliang will be very happy. The great wizard Gongzhu was stunned for a moment. Then he laughed and said, "What? You're the new human emperor? Brother Shang, if you're the new human emperor, I'll take my head off and let you sit on it." Yi Fei said seriously, "I'm really the new human emperor. Ha, I can't. Brother Shang, I didn't expect you to be so humorous, even though you look so honest. However, we can only say this to ourselves. We can't be negligent in front of the great wizard. Come with me." The great wizard Gongzhu refused to believe Yi Fei's words. Although the great wizard Gongzhu felt that Yi Fei looked a little similar to the new human emperor, the effect of the invisible god battle robe was really powerful. Even though Yi Fei was standing in front of the great wizard Gongzhu, he still didn't reveal any flaws. This gave Yi Fei the courage to run directly to meet the wizard god Qinliang. Just like in a human battlefield, those who had broken through to the earthly venerable rank could establish divine palaces. In Lonely Ridge, any wizard who had become a wizard god could establish their own golden palace and recruit all kinds of great wizards and wizards to work for them. Usually, the more golden wizards who joined the golden palace, the more proof that the wizard god had the higher one's strength and status, the higher one's status. To Yi Fei's surprise, Grand Venerable Qinliang, who was famous in a lonely mountain range, was not only in a remote location, but the number of gold magi that Yi Fei sensed with his psychic power was also less than half the number of gold magi in other palaces. Senior Magus Gongzhu saw the confusion in Yi Fei's heart and explained in a low voice, "Senior Magus Qinliang is different from the other senior magi. The other senior magi are all from noble clans." Grand Sovereign Qinliang was the only Grand Sovereign who was a refugee without any foundation. Therefore, Grand Sovereign Qinliang only accepted Grand Magi who were of the same status as him. Join the Golden Palace. Furthermore, Brother Shang, you came at the right time. Our Lonely Mountain Ridge just so happens to have a major event that is about to happen. Wait a moment, I'll report this to the Great Senior. While speaking, Great Shaman Gongzhu had already led Yi Fei to the steps of the Golden Palace. Above the steps, there was a magnificent palace made entirely of gold, which was the residence of great sage Qinliang. Along the way, Yi Fei saw a total of 10 such palaces. 2 of them. This meant that there were as many as 12 sorcerer celestials in the Lonely Mountain Ridge. This was a good news for the human tribe. Just as Yi Fei was sizing up the Golden Palace, Great Shaman Gongzhu had already walked out of the palace excitedly. "Brother Shang, the Grand Sovereign invites you in. Thank you for your trouble." Yi Fei cupped his hands and followed behind Great Shaman Gongzhu. Along the way, he discovered many tyrannical mind energies sweeping over. The owners of these mind energies were all gold sorcerers who cultivated in great sage Chun Liang's Golden Palace. Some of them had wings on their backs, while others were covered in mysterious sorcerer runes. Some of them reared brutal, ancient, desolate beasts in captivity, while others even transformed their bodies into iron men, gold men, and other forms. Yi Fei knew that the different forms of sorcerers represented the different paths they walked. For example, sorcerers communicated with heaven and earth. They were existences similar to sorcerers. Their bodies were not strong, but they could easily borrow the power of the laws of heaven and earth to increase the power of their sorcerer spells by tenfold, or even tenfold. There were also weapon sorcerers who could refine all kinds of powerful sorcerer weapons, puppets, mechanical puppets, and even corpse puppet armies. There were also evil weapon sorcerers who could summon ghosts, vengeful spirits, demons, and other servants to fight for them. For example, Zhu Yang, whom Yi Fei had encountered in the northern region, was a terrifying weapon sorcerer. He could gather earth into sand and summoned sand demon puppets. He could even transform his body into a monster's and was very difficult to kill. On the other hand, Yi Fei's battle sorcerer path was ordinary. He did not have sorcerers who could mobilize the power of heaven and earth to increase the power of his sorcerer spells. He also did not have the means to refine puppets and form an army. At most, he was a meat shield with rough skin and thick flesh. He did not have much attack power. Therefore, unless they had no other choice, very few sorcerers would choose to walk the path of battle sorcerer. When he heard that great sorcerer Gong Zhu had brought back a battle sorcerer, and a battle sorcerer who had a gold treasure, even great sorcerer Chen Liang was stunned. On the throne, a pair of deep eyes immediately stared at Yi Fei. His eyes were fixed on Yi Fei. "You are not Shang Jiao." Shang Jiao and Jin Shi are brothers. They had already broken through to become gold sorcerers 10,000 years ago. However, you have just broken through to become a gold sorcerer. Even if you're reincarnated, your cultivation speed is too slow. On the throne, the golden light that filled the sky dissipated. It was an ordinary-looking old man. Great sorcerer Chen Liang had become a sorcerer god because he was a refugee. He was undoubtedly a legend of the sorcerer tribe. Such a person would not easily believe Yi Fei's identity just because of a few words from Yi Fei. However, since Yi Fei dared to come, of course, he was fully prepared. He did not deny it at once. Instead, he nodded frankly and said, "Yes, I am not the real Shang Jiao. The real Shang Jiao has died in this world, but he still lives in my memory." Immediately, Yi Fei briefly told him about Shang Jiao's unprecedented memory sorcery. He also told him about how he had merged with Shang Jiao's memory in the sorcerer world. When he heard that Shang Jiao could create a new memory sorcery when he was only a senior sorcerer and could perfectly pass on his hatred and gold treasure to Yi Fei through his memory, even great sorcerer Chen Liang, the legendary sorcerer god, could not help but stand up from the throne in shock. This is too amazing. This is too great. If this Shang Jiao can become a sorcerer god, he will definitely achieve something unprecedented in the lonely mountain ridge. Yi Fei smiled and said, "Great sorcerer, the former Shang Jiao is dead, but the current Shang Jiao is still alive. Perhaps I can break through to become a sorcerer god and achieve something that will surpass all the other sorcerer gods." Great sorcerer Gong Zhu was startled. He secretly clicked his tongue and said, "Brother Shang looks honest, but I didn't expect him to talk so crazily. Did I recommend the wrong person?" Great sorcerer Gong Zhu began to feel uneasy. He hurriedly stole a glance at great sorcerer Chen Liang. Great sorcerer Chen Liang looked at Yi Fei expressionlessly. He nodded, then shook his head. Suddenly, without saying anything, he reached out a large hand and slowly grabbed Yi Fei. Chapter 1864. Yi Fei remained calm. Even if he panicked, it would be useless. After all, he was facing a sorcerer god. Even if he unleashed his full strength, he wouldn't be a match for the sorcerer god. Since there was no point in panicking, what was there to be afraid of? He might as well show his strength boldly. "Sword come!" Yi Fei bellowed. His eyes shone with a sword-like sharpness. The majestic mind power in his golden divine treasure transformed into a huge golden divine sword. It suddenly rushed out of Yi Fei's body and slashed a Grand Monarch Chen Liang's palm. Golden divine sword? Is this the ability you obtained? It's not bad, but it's a pity that it's still far from a superior sorcerer technique. Grand Monarch Chen Liang shook his head. His palm suddenly turned to stone. Then, two petrified fingers clamped Yi Fei's golden divine sword between his fingers. It broke into two halves between his fingers. Yi Fei was shocked. Although he knew that those who could become supremes were the most powerful beings in this world, Grand Monarch Chen Liang's terrifying strength made him deeply understand how terrifying the sorcerer god's strength was. The sorcerer god was at least 2 to 3 times weaker than a human earthly venerable who was also a supremacy. On the other hand, the true battle strength of a heavenly god and a human god was several times stronger than Grand Monarch Chen Liang. Yi Fei immediately felt a huge pressure in his heart. At the same time, this pressure immediately turned into intense anger. Rumble. The entire Golden Palace suddenly rumbled with thunder. Countless purple thunderbolts erupted wildly with Yi Fei as the center. Instantly, Grand Monarch Chun Liang's body seemed to have sunk into a terrifying sea of thunderbolts. The roaring thunderbolts made the expressions of Grand Monarch Gongzhu, who was watching the battle from the side, change drastically. This thunderbolt is infinitely close to a gold-grade sorcerer technique. It's still too weak. Grand Monarch Chun Liang smiled coldly. He just casually slapped his palm. At this moment, his entire palm had turned to stone. It was like a huge millstone of heaven and earth that crashed into the thunderbolt. The purple thunderbolt that Yi Fei had condensed exploded and no longer existed. Kill. However, just as the lightning exploded, Yi Fei's eyes suddenly flashed with a terrifying blood-red killing intent. The entire Roland's Golden Palace seemed to be dyed with a layer of bloody killing intent. Then, Yi Fei grabbed a scarlet mountain of blood swords and slashed it at Grand Monarch Chun Liang's petrified hand that was as large as a millstone. Good timing. This sword strike is quite interesting. Supreme Sovereign Chun Liang suddenly laughed. His huge palm grew even larger. Even space seemed to be petrified and completely solidified wherever it passed. When Yi Fei's sword was halfway through its slash, he was shocked to discover that his bloody sword mountain had turned into an extremely heavy stone mountain. It was as if it was going to crush him completely under the bloody sword mountain. In Yi Fei's heart, a strong sense of anger and fighting spirit flashed across his mind. I'm a demigod. I can't defeat a divine realm expert, but I'm a grand sorcerer. How can I not defeat Qin Liang? Stone sword slash. Boom! Following Yi Fei's anger, a terrifying force suddenly erupted from his body. It allowed him to raise the petrified sword mountain and smash it at Grand Monarch Chun Liang's body. Grand Monarch Chun Liang's expression changed. Clearly, he had not expected Yi Fei's physical strength to be so terrifying. He actually raised the petrified giant sword and smashed it back at Grand Monarch Chun Liang. This was no longer a sorcerer's attack. It was clearly a warrior's attack. Under Grand Monarch Chun Liang's pressure, Yi Fei could not help but reveal some of his warrior habits. Fortunately, he was a battle sorcerer. Battle sorcerers had always been known for their strong physical bodies and were the best cannon fodder for the sorcerer race. Therefore, Yi Fei did not have to worry about exposing his identity as a warrior by raising the mountain of stone swords. On the contrary, Yi Fei's sudden attack had an unexpected effect. When Yi Fei furiously swung the mountain of stone swords at Grand Monarch Chun Liang, he heard a loud boom. Grand Monarch Chun Liang's body was sent flying by Yi Fei's attack like a stone. Oh my god, this kid actually sent a supreme martial artist flying. Grand Sorcerer Gongzhu's eyes were so wide that two rays of dazzling golden light shot out of them. Yi Fei was so frightened that he even wanted to turn around and run for his life. After all, he really did not mean to send Grand Monarch Chun Liang flying. If he angered the Grand Monarch, not only would his plan to sabotage the marriage be ruined, but he might not even be able to walk out of the Roland's palace alive. Grand Monarch Chun Liang, are you all right? I really didn't do it on purpose. Yi Fei had a worried look on his face. At this moment, Grand Monarch Chun Liang's face was twitching as he stood up furiously from his divine throne. He had not expected that a moment of carelessness would cause him to be sent flying by Yi Fei's stone sword. This scene happened to be witnessed by Grand Sorcerer Gongzhu's subordinate. However, Grand Monarch Chun Liang did not flare up. Instead, he stared thoughtfully at the stone sword that Yi Fei had thrown down and said, I see. We sorcerers can also walk the path of martial arts. It's just that the power we use is different. The so-called battle sorcerers are sorcerers who fight with martial arts. What? Fight with martial arts? Grand Sorcerer Gongzhu was shocked. This completely overturned his understanding of sorcerers. Yi Fei also looked at Grand Monarch Chun Liang nervously. He was afraid that Grand Monarch Chun Liang would notice something amiss with his actions. If that happened, he would have nowhere to run. Grand Monarch Chun Liang also stared seriously at Yi Fei and asked in a low voice, was it Shang Jiu's memory that made you choose the battle sorcerer sect? Yi Fei could only brace himself and say, that's right. Shang most powerful battle sorcerer sect is Battle Sorcerer. He's actually a battle sorcerer. Since battle sorcerers are so powerful and can use martial arts like warriors, why are all the other battle sorcerers I've seen so weak? Apart from being able to act as meat shields, I can't see any other strong points. Grand Sorcerer Gongzhu was shocked. Grand Monarch Qinliang took a deep look at Yi Fei and did not answer his question. Instead, he shook his head and said, "There's still a big difference between battle sorcerers and warriors. Warriors have powerful martial arts techniques that are based on their mind power and divine treasures, while battle sorcerers cultivate battle techniques that are based on their mind power and divine treasures. I finally understand why grand monarchs like us are no match for earthly venerables of the human race." Grand Monarch Qinliang's tone was so low that even Yi Fei and Grand Sorcerer Gongzhu could not hear him clearly. Chapter 1865. Supreme Venerable Chun Liang stared coldly at Yi Fei and said, "Why? Is it unfair for you to become my disciple? Although you have Shangjiu's memories, you are not the real Shangjiu. No one in the sorcerer tribe has ever broken through to become a supreme venerable. Now you have two choices. I will train you to become a sorcerer god. You can choose not to be my disciple, and I will let you cultivate in the Golden Palace." Seeing Supreme Venerable Chun Liang's generosity, the first to be moved was not Yi Fei, but the great sorcerer Gongzhu. The great sorcerer Gongzhu wiped his tears excitedly and almost choked with sobs. As expected of Supreme Venerable Chun Liang. "What are you waiting for, Brother Shang? What are you waiting for? You can't disappoint the great sage." Yi Fei struggled. He was not a sorcerer tribe member. If he suddenly became Supreme Venerable Chun Liang's disciple, wouldn't they turn against each other and kill each other when they met during the Great War of the Sorcerer Tribe? However, if he didn't agree to Chun Liang's request, Yi Fei would never believe that Chun Liang would be so magnanimous as to let go of an opponent who had a high chance of breaking through to the Supreme Magus Realm, no matter how magnanimous Chun Liang seemed, after experiencing the repeated schemes of the Divine God, the Human God, and the Hidden God. He had to take the risk to grow. There are only two possibilities in this situation. Either I am really selfless and wholeheartedly want to strengthen the refugee sorcerers, or this is a test by Supreme Venerable Chun Liang. If it's the former, it's fine. If it's the latter, Yi Fei's heart suddenly shuddered. If it was the latter, it meant that Supreme Venerable Chun Liang was too shrewd. It would be fine if he agreed, but if he didn't, he might not even be able to see the sun tomorrow, let alone become a sorcerer god. Understanding this, Yi Fei finally made up his mind. He asked in a low voice, "Supreme Venerable, what benefits can I get if I become your disciple?" "Brother Shang, what nonsense are you talking about? It's such a great honor to be your disciple. How can you ask for benefits?" Gongzhu Great Shaman was shocked. He seriously doubted whether Yi Fei was blinded by money. He even dared to say such crazy words. If it had been any other magus asking for benefits like this, the other sorcerer gods would have slapped them to death without a second thought. Supreme Venerable Chun Liang didn't expect Yi Fei to ask for benefits before becoming a disciple. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Then, Supreme Venerable Chun Liang thought again. As if realizing something, his expression became even more amiable. "Well, since you become my disciple, as your teacher, I can't be too stingy. I happen to have a gold-grade battle shaman art here. Take it and cultivate." Grand Sovereign Qin Liang extended a finger again and suddenly tapped Yi Fei's forehead. Yi Fei did not resist this time. Instead, he allowed the stone finger to touch his forehead. Then, a powerful sorcery spell appeared in his mind. Battle Shaman, perish the gods. This was a battle technique that only battle shamans could use. Yi Fei couldn't help but stare at Supreme Venerable Chun Liang in shock. He could tell that Supreme Venerable Chun Liang was a sorcerer. How could he have a battle technique of the battle shaman sect? As if he understood Yi Fei's doubts, Supreme Venerable Chun Liang said coldly, "Very few people in our sorcerer tribe cultivate the battle shaman art. However, it's not that there aren't any. I obtained this perish, the god battle technique, by chance in an ancient ruin. Unfortunately, I'm a sorcerer, so I haven't been able to cultivate this battle technique. I hope that you can bring it to greater heights. All right, you can leave now. Gongzhu, you stay and tell me about the new human emperor. Just like that, before Yi Fei could say anything, Supreme Venerable Chunliang had already treated Yi Fei as his disciple. This attracted a look of extreme envy from Gongzhu Great Shaman. One had to know that he was Supreme Venerable Chunliang's confidant, but even he didn't have the chance to become the sorcerer god's disciple. However, as soon as Yi Fei arrived, Supreme Venerable Chunliang rushed to take him as his disciple. How could Gongzhu Great Shaman not be envious? It's really infuriating to compare great shamans. However, Brother Shang has the golden divine treasure. Strictly speaking, this kid can't be considered the real Shangjiao. Gongzhu Great Shaman muttered as he stared at Yi Fei's back. Supreme Venerable Chunliang was expressionless as he stared at Yi Fei's back. Suddenly, an undetectable coldness flashed through his eyes. Then, he withdrew his gaze and glanced at Gongzhu Great Shaman. Gongzhu, have you done what I asked you to do? Gongzhu Great Shaman's face turned pale. He knew that what was coming had finally come. Fortunately, he had been prepared. He had brought back Yi Fei, who had the golden divine treasure, and reported the good news first before reporting the bad news. Forgive me, Supreme Venerable. That new human emperor is too cunning. I couldn't find any clues about the new human emperor even after digging 3 feet into the ground of the lonely mountain ridge. Could it be false information from the human race? Do you think the divine realm is a fool? This is a crucial moment in our cooperation. If he dares to lie to me, it won't do him any good. The new human emperor must be hiding somewhere in the lonely mountain ridge. We must find him. Supreme Venerable Chunliang's expression grew colder. Although it was rumored that the new human emperor was only an insignificant demigod, as a shaman god, Chunliang's intuition told him that leaving the new human emperor alone would be a very dangerous thing to do. Great Shaman Gongzhu immediately understood and knelt down. Don't worry, Supreme Venerable. I will gather the other shamans of the Golden Palace and rush to the lonely mountain ridge together. This time, we will find the new human emperor and kill him even if we have to turn the universe upside down. No, leave the matter of the new human emperor to the others. Gongzhu, you're most familiar with Shangjiao. From now on, you will be in charge of monitoring Shangjiao. You must record his every word and action and report to me at any time. Supreme Venerable Chunliang's tone suddenly became indifferent. Although he had forcibly taken Yi Fei as his disciple, his tone didn't seem to have any intention of treating Yi Fei as his disciple. Great Shaman Gongzhu's expression changed drastically. He suddenly felt that Supreme Venerable Chunliang had become an unprecedented stranger. However, as a great shaman of the Golden Palace, Gongzhu was undoubtedly a smart person. He knew what to ask and what not to ask, so he respectfully retreated and said, Supreme Venerable, I know what to do. Work hard. Perhaps I will hand over the Golden Palace to you in the future. Also, when Shangjiao has mastered the battle technique, take him to the dark underworld hall. Supreme Venerable Chunliang ordered coldly. Obviously, Chunliang wasn't as kind and harmless as he seemed on the surface, as he had been able to grow from a refugee shaman with no background to the current supreme shaman. Great Shaman Gongzhu's heart trembled once again. He was both shocked by Supreme Venerable Chunliang's order and overjoyed by his hint. Brother Shangjiao, for the sake of Supreme Venerable and my future, it seems that I have to wrong you. Great Shaman Gongzhu's eyes flashed vaguely with an ominous glint before he retreated respectfully. After retreating, Great Shaman Gongzhu's expression returned to normal, and he became even more enthusiastic towards Yi Fei. Chapter 1866. Shaman Gongzhu was very enthusiastic. Before Yi Fei could refuse, he dragged Yi Fei to his palace for a drink. At the same time, the news that Yi Fei had become the disciple of Supreme Venerable Chunliang spread like wildfire. Many shamans in the Golden Palace were secretly envious and shocked. No wonder he's a genius with a golden treasure. He became the disciple of Supreme, Venerable Chunliang as soon as he joined the Golden Palace. This is the saying, comparing shamans to shamans. It's so hateful that Gongzhu took the chance to curry favor with young master. The shamans in the Golden Palace were very angry that Gongzhu only invited Yi Fei to drink with him. It was obvious that he wanted to establish a one-way connection with Yi Fei. Yi Fei also felt that Gongzhu was too enthusiastic. Not only did he invite him to drink, but he also wanted to eat with him and sleep with him on the same bed. After sternly rejecting the rude request of the great shaman of Gongzhu, the great shaman of Gongzhu slapped his forehead and suddenly put down the huge bowl. He said loudly with the smell of alcohol, "Brother Shang, you and I feel like old friends at first sight, and we are both in the same Golden Palace. Why don't we become sworn brothers? We'll help each other in the future. We can take care of each other." "What? You want to become sworn brothers?" Yi Fei's face turned green. He was very depressed that Supreme Venerable Chunliang had forcibly taken him as his disciple. Now, Gongzhu even wanted to become sworn brothers with him. Even if he wanted to win people over, wasn't he too enthusiastic? However, Yi Fei didn't have any hesitation this time. If he wanted to destroy the marriage between the shaman tribe and Supreme Venerable Chunliang, he had to enter the upper echelons of the shaman tribe. Even the identity of Supreme Venerable Chunliang's disciple was not enough. He had to be familiar with the upper echelons of the shaman tribe and get more information. And this overly enthusiastic senior magus in front of Ji Hao was obviously a very good breakthrough point. Most importantly, although Senior Magus Gong had a brain, he was obviously a big mouth and liked to talk about everything. Without a doubt, he was the best breakthrough point for Ji Hao to get information. Immediately, Yi Fei didn't refuse. Instead, he sincerely raised his bowl and said, "Thank you, Brother Gongzhu, for thinking so highly of me. I won't refuse. Haha, Brother Shang, from now on, we're brothers. Come, let's toast to our brotherhood." Gongzhu was overjoyed. He had been worried about not having a chance to keep an eye on Yi Fei. Now that they had become brothers, he had a reason to stay by Yi Fei's side and keep an eye on Yi Fei's every move. If possible, for the sake of his future, Gongzhu would even sleep with Yi Fei. Of course, if Gongzhu really dared to do that, even if they were brothers, Yi Fei would definitely beat Gongzhu to death on the spot. Not to mention, even though both sides had sworn brotherhood, there was no sincerity in it. Yi Fei did not mention burning yellow paper, and Gongzhu did not mention spitting blood. This kind of oath was not very convincing. But strangely, Yi Fei seemed to have overlooked this point, and the great shaman also seemed to have forgotten this point. After drinking wine with each other and calling each other brothers, the great shaman obviously became more enthusiastic. He hooked his arm around Yi Fei's shoulder and said in a low voice, "Little Nine, we are like-minded and become brothers. Since we're brothers, we can share our secrets. How about this? I'll tell you a secret, and you'll tell me a secret. Let's exchange secrets. What do you think?" "Oh, I wonder what secret brother wants to tell me." Yi Fei remained calm and asked in a low voice. He looked very interested. Perhaps because he was drunk, Gongzhu's face was red, and his breath reeked of alcohol. He looked around and said, "Little Jiao, do you know why Grandmaster was so anxious to accept you as his disciple?" "Oh, is there any mystery in it? Elder brother, please tell me." Yi Fei revealed a simple and honest smile. This kind of smile was very contagious. At the very least, Grand Shaman Gongzhu was infected by it. He sighed inwardly. This kid is a rare, honest person. Unfortunately, he's too honest. He even dared to send a great senior flying, which angered the great senior and ruined his own future for no reason. If I don't take this as a warning, I'll definitely follow in his footsteps. Therefore, Gongzhu's great shaman raised his spirit and mysteriously used his spiritual power to send a message to Yi Fei. "Little Jiao, to tell you the truth, Grandmaster Chunliang has already persuaded the other Grandmasters to marry the god of Human Clan in exchange for peace for our Wu clan. It's just that our Golden Palace has never had a strong young expert who could compete with the other Golden Palace experts for this marriage. Until your appearance, Grandmaster saw hope, so he decided to let you represent our Golden Palace to fight the other young great shamans. Therefore, you must seize this opportunity. Not only can you win face for our Golden Palace, but you can also win back the Empress. What Gongju's great shaman revealed this time was indeed an absolute secret that only the higher-ups of the Wu clan knew. Moreover, Yi Fei was surprised to find that the Wu clan's marriage had not been decided yet. After all, the Wu clan was not comparable to the human clan. In the Wu clan, there were 12 great shamans. Similarly, each great shaman had their own golden palace and many subordinates. These great shamans were not stupid. They naturally knew how great the benefits of marrying the god of human clan were. In this way, the Wu clan would not only be able to open the impregnable pass of the human clan effortlessly and make the human clan yield, but also be able to make friends with the god of human clan, who had shocking battle strength. Therefore, as long as the Golden Palace could marry the daughter of a deity, they would definitely obtain great benefits in this marriage. It was also because of this reason that the 12 Golden Palaces unanimously decided to send out their most outstanding young shamans to duel to determine the winner. Which Golden Palace would marry the god of human clan? And according to Great Shaman Gongju's words, Great Shaman Chen Liang seemed to have the intention of letting Yi Fei represent the Golden Palace to fight against the other young great shamans. After digesting this top secret revealed by Great Shaman Gongju, Yi Fei's expression suddenly became extremely strange. It should be known that his purpose of coming here was to sneak into the higher-ups of the Wu clan and find a chance to assassinate the god of human clan's marriage. In the end, not only did he accidentally become the great shaman's disciple, but he also became one of the candidates for the marriage. This result was something that Yi Fei had never thought of. How is it, Brother Shang? The secret that I told you is amazing, right? Now that you know my secret, you should also tell me a secret, right? Gongju burped, looking drunk. He laughed and laughed, completely in a joking tone. But Gongju's eyes were fixed on Yi Fei, paying attention to Yi Fei's every move. But to Gongju's disappointment, Yi Fei's expression was still so honest and honest. At this time, it was even more serious and serious. He nodded very sincerely and said, "Since elder brother is willing to take the risk to tell me such a secret, then I won't hide it. Then I won't hide it from you anymore. Actually, I am the new emperor." "What? You're the new emperor?" "Ha ha. Gongju, actually became sworn brothers with the new emperor." "Brother, you are too funny. I can't take it anymore. I'm dying of laughter." Great Shaman Gongju did not wait for Yi Fei to speak, and had already slapped the table and laughed wildly. Chapter 1867. This kid is quite shrewd. No wonder Shang Jiu chose him. Just like Grand Shaman Gongju, Grand Sovereign Chen Liang didn't take Yi Fei's honest confession to heart. Firstly, the concealment effect of the invisible god battle robe was too good. Secondly, when he attacked Yi Fei, Grand Sovereign Chen Liang had silently checked Yi Fei's body and didn't find anything wrong. Lastly, Shang Jiu's memory inheritance had caused Grand Shaman Gongju and Grand Sovereign Chen Liang to have a huge misunderstanding. They thought Yi Fei was just lucky to be a refugee shaman who had inherited Shang Jiu's memory inheritance. How could they have known that Yi Fei would be so daring as to publicly reveal his identity? He had even snuck into Roland's Golden Palace and called Grand Shaman Gongju his brother. Therefore, Yi Fei's act of revealing his identity didn't arouse Grand Sovereign Chen Liang's suspicion. Instead, they all thought that Yi Fei was too cunning and didn't want to reveal his secret. It seems that I'll have to think long and hard before I dig out the secret of the battle shaman. Outside the palace, Grand Sovereign Chen Liang's penetrating vision finally returned to normal. Then, he disappeared into thin air as if he had never been there. The other grand shamans in Roland's Golden Palace didn't notice anything strange either. Yi Fei finally heaved a sigh of relief. The other grand shamans couldn't sense Grand Sovereign Chen Liang's surveillance. However, Xiao Chao was different. Apart from spirit stones, Xiao Chao also liked to consume spirit energy. Therefore, not only was Xiao Chao very sensitive to spirit energy, but he was also very sensitive to spirit energy. Even the sorcerer god couldn't escape Xiao Chao's senses if he released his spirit energy. Yi Fei finally discovered the secret behind Grand Shaman Gongzhu becoming sworn brothers with him. It seems that Grand Sovereign Qinliang didn't take me as his disciple simply because he wants me to represent Roland's Golden Palace in battle. He must have other motives. However, I don't know what those motives are. Yi Fei was a little depressed. He knew that Grand Monarch Qinliang was up to no good, but he couldn't do anything about it. First of all, he wasn't strong enough to fight the sorcerer god. Second of all, he needed Grand Monarch Qinliang's name to participate in the heavenly god and Qinliang's plan. As the disciple of the sorcerer god, a gold sorcerer, and a sworn brother of sorcerer Gongzhu, even though Yi Fei had just joined Roland's palace, he was already in existence that could do whatever he wanted. However, Yi Fei didn't go out to flaunt his prowess because of this. Instead, on the second day, he moved into the palace that Gongzhu had arranged for him and prepared to go into seclusion to practice his newly acquired magus art, the god-slaying battle technique. It was only after seeing this battle skill that Yi Fei realized why even a grand monarch like Grand Monarch Qinliang couldn't cultivate it. So, only battle shamans can practice battle techniques. Moreover, the amount of magic crystals required to cultivate a combat skill is even more terrifying. Magic crystals are mineral veins made up of spiritual crystals. Just like spiritual stones, a spiritual vein could produce countless spiritual stones. A vein of magic crystals could also produce countless spiritual crystals. For example, if Yi Fei wanted to master the god-slaying battle technique, he would have to consume the spiritual origin of his gold divine treasure if he didn't have magic crystals. Spiritual origin was the same as a warrior's blood essence. Both were constant. It was easy to consume it, but it was extremely difficult to replenish it. In particular, there were many magus arts that specialized in attacking divine treasures. Once the spiritual origin of the divine treasure was damaged, it would be very easy for hostile magi to use it to harm others. It seems that I will need a large amount of magic crystals if I want to master this magus art without any damage. But where should I go to get these magic crystals? Yi Fei was very depressed. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have killed Jin Wu. If I had captured Jin Wu, I could have easily extorted a large amount of magic crystals from the Tianfeng tribe. Only then did Xiao Chao and the dragon turtle realize that Yi Fei had suffered a great loss by killing Jin Wu. Xiao Chao and the dragon turtle looked pained. However, Ling Siki cheered Yi Fei on, "Little Guogua, do your best. Brothers have the righteousness of sharing wealth." Yi Fei's dejected spirit was suddenly jolted. Why didn't I think of that? I don't have magic crystals, but Grand Shaman Gongzhu definitely has them, since he has become my sworn brother. Then, when a brother is in trouble, an elder brother should be generous. Also, there's Roland's palace. Gongzhu is not the only Grand Shaman. I don't know why, but since Qinliang wants a scheme against me, then I'm afraid that he gave me this god-slaying battle technique as another test. Since the revered master was heartless, then don't blame the disciple for being unscrupulous. After Ling Siki's reminder, Yi Fei quickly saw a great plan to make a fortune. Immediately, he didn't even cultivate his battle technique. Instead, he excitedly went to find Grand Shaman Gongzhu. "Big brother Gongzhu, when we were drinking yesterday, you said that if I have any trouble, I can look for you. Is that true or false?" Yi Fei asked directly. Gongzhu was stunned for a moment when he heard this. Then, he reacted and nodded solemnly. If a brother is in trouble, Gongzhu will not shirk his duty. "That's right, little Gio, you are now the great honored master's disciple. Who in Roland's golden palace dares to provoke you? What trouble do you have?" Yi Fei scratched his head embarrassedly. "Actually, it's not a big deal. It's just that I need some magic crystals to cultivate my battle technique. I don't ask for much, so I'll have to trouble Elder Brother to lend me 10,000 magic crystals. When I have time in the future, I will definitely return them. It's just magic crystals? I thought it was a big deal. Wait, how many magic crystals did you just say? Suddenly, Grand Shaman Gongzhu looked at Yi Fei in shock. Yi Fei flashed a toothy grin, brimming with the bashfulness of a big boy. With a simple and honest smile, he said, "Big brother, I'm not asking for much. 10,000 magic crystals is enough. Your brother is a man of wealth. A mere 10,000 magic crystals is nothing to you. To be able to meet you in this life is my fortune. Brother, don't. Please spare me. 10,000 magic crystals is equivalent to 10,000 spiritual veins. My entire fortune is only about 3,000 magic crystals." Grand Shaman Gongzhu immediately began to cry about being poor. Yi Fei's eyes suddenly lit up. He smiled and said, "I don't want to make things difficult for Elder Brother. How about this? You lend me 2,000 magic crystals. Then, tell me the names and addresses of all the Grand Shamans in the Roland's Golden Palace. I will borrow the rest of the magic crystals from them." What? It's not enough for you to borrow all my magic crystals? You still want to borrow from other Roland's Golden Palace shamans? Grand Shaman Gongzhu's face turned pale. He suddenly had an impulse to cut all ties with Yi Fei. However, he couldn't do anything about the fact that it was Chen Liang himself who had ordered him to keep an eye on Yi Fei. Even though Grand Shaman Gongzhu's face had already turned blue, he was still smiling in the face of Yi Fei's open extortion. Not only did he take out 2,000 magic crystals, he also gave Yi Fei a magic crystal pagoda. After that, Grand Shaman Gongzhu casually wrote a list of names, handed it to Yi Fei, and said, "Brother, these are the names and addresses of all the Grand Shamans in the Roland's Golden Palace. You can go there. If you don't have enough magic crystals, just ask them." Chapter 1868. Great Sage, this is what happened. This brat is simply insane. He's infuriated by both humans and magi. It's not enough for him to borrow all my magic crystals. He even extended his evil hands to other great magi. Great Sage, please help us. Below the throne, Great Magus Gongzhu's face was filled with anger. Every time he thought of the 2,000 magic crystals that he lent out, his heart would ache faintly. He had the urge to fight to the death with Yi Fei. Of course, Gongzhu didn't know that when Yi Fei went from house to house and knocked on the doors of other gold great magi to borrow magic crystals, those gold great magi also had the urge to skin Great Magus Gongzhu alive. This was because Yi Fei's excuse for knocking on doors was very dignified. At the same time, every time he knocked on the door of a gold great magi's palace, Yi Fei would solemnly tell these gold great magi that it was Great Magus Gongzhu's good elder brother who specially instructed him to come here to borrow magic crystals. This also gave the golden great shaman, who opened the door, an illusion that Yi Fei would not have come here to borrow magic crystals. However, he could not resist the guidance of his good brother, the great shaman Gongzhu, behind Yi Fei. That was why Yi Fei had his eyes on them. Damn Gongzhu. It's fine that he's a bootlicker, but he actually dares to sacrifice our interests to flatter Great Sage's disciple. Gongzhu, I'll remember this. That Shangjiu is Great Sage's disciple. We can't afford to offend him. However, you, Gongzhu, are just a dog by Great Sage's side. Don't tell me we can't afford to offend you. Stop scolding. I'm going to directly activate my mega spell and turn that Gongzhu into a pig. Yi Fei only went from house to house in Roland's Golden Palace. The entire Roland's Golden Palace suddenly became filled with resentment. There were really gold great magi who couldn't stand this and secretly went up to the altar to cast a spell, secretly preparing to do something evil to Gongzhu. It was said that the artifact shaman who had suffered the most losses had purposely placed many evil voodoo insects in Gongzhu's palace, hoping that Gongzhu would be bitten to death by these voodoo insects. Of course, none of this had anything to do with Yi Fei. He had successfully borrowed 10,000 magic crystal veins and found that Grand Monarch Chen Liang hadn't reacted at all. It was as if Grand Monarch Chen Liang really treated him as a disciple and tolerated his mischief. Sneering inwardly, Yi Fei didn't hesitate to return. The palace took out the pagoda filled with magic crystals. This pagoda was very similar to the spirit-gathering pagoda. The only difference was that one contained spirit veins while the other contained magic crystals. However, both magic crystals and spirit stones were Xiao Chao's favorite foods. Thus, when Xiao Chao sensed that the interior of the palace wasn't being monitored, she immediately ran into the magic crystal pagoda from the beastmark space. She immediately hugged the spiritual energy hidden inside the magic crystal and happily rolled around on the ground. At this time, a black mouth suddenly stretched out beside Xiao Chao. With a crunch, it bit off half of the mental energy that Xiao Chao grabbed from the magic crystal. Yi Fei and Xiao Chao's faces immediately darkened. Ling Siqi's face was full of confusion. What should I do? Xiao Chao and the dragon turtle have already started eating the magic crystals. If I don't eat them, I don't seem to fit in. As she spoke, the little girl secretly glanced at Yi Fei. Seeing that Yi Fei didn't react, she shyly stretched out her little hand and secretly grabbed a few pieces of mental energy crystals. Seeing that Yi Fei still didn't react, Ling Siqi's courage was boosted. In the end, she couldn't resist the temptation of the magic crystals and ran over. She began to refine the magic crystals at the edge of the pagoda. Yi Fei pretended that he didn't see anything. Although martial artists didn't have divine treasures and couldn't actively cultivate their mental energy, if they used some heaven and earth treasures, they could passively improve their mental energy. It was just that the effect wasn't as good as actively cultivating it. Yi Fei also knew the use of the magic crystals, which was why he decided to extort so many magic crystals at once. First, he wanted to use this matter to test Grand Sovereign Chun Liang's attitude toward him. Second, Yi Fei also needed these magic crystals to improve the strength of the human emperor palace when he returned to the human race's impregnable pass in the future. Now it seems that either I'm overthinking and Grand Sovereign Chun Liang really does treat me as a disciple, or Grand Sovereign Chun Liang's scheme towards me is far more than just 10,000 magic crystals. But no matter which it is, if I want to survive in this golden palace, I have to become stronger. So strong that even Grand Shaman Gongzhu and Grand Sovereign Chun Liang are wary of me. This way, no matter what the other party's scheme is, I can easily resolve it with my absolute strength. Yi Fei closed his eyes and suddenly opened his golden divine trove. In an instant, a layer of pale, golden spiritual energy enveloped the magic crystals and rapidly refined them into a part of the golden divine trove. Then, a large amount of magic crystals were refined. Yi Fei's mind also began to continuously deduce the god-slaying battle skill. Vaguely, Yi Fei's mental consciousness entered a strange mental space as he cultivated the battle skill. This space was very similar to a special martial arts arena. However, it wasn't Yi Fei's physical body that was performing martial arts here, but Yi Fei's mental energy. This was the biggest difference between martial arts and battle skills. Cultivating martial arts relied on the spirit and vital essence, while cultivating battle skills relied on the divine treasure and mental energy. However, despite the difference in power, Yi Fei vaguely had a strange feeling that battle skills and martial arts seemed to be interlinked. It was as if the god-slaying battle skill he cultivated in the mental space could not only be used with mental energy, but also with mental energy. Using spiritual energy to cast it, and it seemed that it could also be cast with true essence. Strange. Why do I have such a strange feeling? Is it because I'm in the enemy's camp and I'm too nervous? Yi Fei couldn't help but open his eyes and look at Xiao Chao. It wasn't until he realized that even though Xiao Chao was competing with the dragon turtle and Ling Siqi for magic crystals, the spiritual eye of heaven and earth on his forehead was still open and alert to the abnormalities in the palace that Yi Fei finally relaxed. He understood that with Xiao Chao around, even the sorcerer god wouldn't be able to spy on his secret. Yi Fei carefully removed the invisible god battle robe. Instantly, Yi Fei's spirit reappeared in his body. At the same time, A majestic vital essence also filled Yi Fei's body. God-slaying battle skill. Yi Fei roared and suddenly activated the majestic vital essence in his spirit. He struck out with a resplendent fist light. This fist light was the God-slaying battle skill. Strictly speaking, this battle skill was called the God-slaying fist. It was equivalent to the primordial heavenly skill of the martial Tao. However, the God-slaying battle skill was fundamentally different from other primordial heavenly skills. Strange, this God-slaying battle skill can actually be activated with vital essence. However, its power is slightly weaker than when activated with mental energy. Boom! Chapter 1869. I actually succeeded. Battle skills can really be used with true essence. Then, on the other hand, can my primordial heavenly technique be used with mental energy? This was definitely a shocking idea. In this world, shamans could only use mind power to execute shaman spells. It was almost impossible for them to use martial arts like martial artists. Yi Fei was an exception. Not only did he have divine treasures, but he also had a divine soul. Not only could he execute martial arts, but he could also execute shaman spells. Coupled with the fact that he had successfully executed a battle technique with true Yuan, Yi Fei naturally had this idea. With Xiao Chao watching, I don't have to worry about Grand Sovereign Chun Liang spying on me. It's worth a try. Heavenly Cauldron suppressing God. Boom! Yi Fei gathered his mind power and simulated the circulation route of true Yuan in his body. Soon, he executed his best primordial heavenly art, Heavenly Cauldron suppressing God. A dazzling golden cauldron appeared in Yi Fei's hand. However, the power of the cauldron was clearly weaker than when executed with true Yuan. Ling Siki was stunned when she saw that Yi Fei could execute martial arts with mind power. Little Gua, what you used just now didn't seem to be true Yuan. That's right. I used mind power. All right, Ling Siki, why don't you try hitting me and see the power of my mind power martial arts? Yi Fei's heart skipped a beat. Although Ling Siki looked innocent and naive, she was still a true demigod expert. Ling Siki didn't hold back when she heard Yi Fei's words. Her originally petite body transformed from a little girl to a fairy who had just walked out of the painting. This was the most amazing thing about the 10 Spirits creation heavenly art. When Ling Siki wasn't fighting, she was an innocent and naive little girl. Once she was in battle, she would become a majestic war goddess. Little Guogua, be careful. This is my most powerful giant spirit palm. Boom! Ling Siki slapped a huge true Yuan palm at Yi Fei. It was as big as a mountain, filling up the space of the pagoda in an instant. Then, it fell on Yi Fei's cauldron. Yi Fei's heart skipped a beat. His mind power instantly went berserk, increasing the power of the cauldron. Ling Siki's giant spirit palm slapped down, but it couldn't even break the golden light of the cauldron. How can this be? Ling Siki's eyes. Xiao Chao was hugging the dragon turtle. Yi Fei didn't say anything. Instead, he was immersed in the comprehension of the martial Tao. After a long while, he finally opened his eyes. A wisp of wild joy and excitement flashed through his eyes. My mind power is... mind power? However, 70% of its power was already enough. At least I'm a witch, and I can use martial arts boldly. If anyone doubts it, I can say it's a battle skill. Ever since Yi Fei found out that the Sorcerer Tribe's marriage partners had to go through a selection process, he decided to give up the plan of assassinating the Sorcerer Tribe's marriage partners. After all, the assassination might fail. But there were 12 golden palaces in the Sorcerer Tribe. In other words, Yi Fei had to defeat 12 golden palaces' young great sorcerers in a row to win the final victory. Under such circumstances, it was far from enough to rely on the blood sword and the god-slaying battle skill. After all, the young senior magi who were able to represent their respective golden palaces would definitely be the strongest. Among them, there would definitely be some geniuses who could master 4 to 5 types of golden magi, or even more. If Yi Fei wanted to win and stand out among these people, he would have to master more magi. He had to have more combat power. Unfortunately, Yi Fei only mastered 2 golden sorcerer techniques. Even among the golden great sorcerers, he was at the bottom. If he wanted to win, the only thing he could rely on was the immemorial celestial technique. The immemorial celestial technique is equivalent to the sorcerer tribe's golden sorcerer techniques. Even if I use my mental strength to cast the immemorial celestial technique, the power will only be 70%. But as long as I can master multiple immemorial celestial techniques at the same time, the power can be reversed and surpass those golden sorcerer techniques. But I have to be careful not to expose my 8 extremities heavenly dragon. And Dutian phaseless trial. Yi Fei's expression was a little serious. The last 2 golden palaces were sovereign techniques and were his signature martial arts. Once he used them, even if he had the invisible god battle robe, he would definitely arouse the sorcerer god's suspicion. Since he discovered that martial arts and battle skills could be used together, Yi Fei was not in a hurry to leave the pagoda. Instead, he began to work hard to use his mental strength to cultivate various immemorial celestial techniques. After about a month, Yi Fei officially came out of seclusion. At this moment, he was already completely familiar with using his mental strength to cast martial arts. This period of time was also the most miserable period for the Golden Great Sorcerer. There were constantly other great sorcerers from the Roland's Golden Palace who would often find trouble with the Golden Great Sorcerer. What made the Golden Great Sorcerer the most worried was that there were many sinister great sorcerers who secretly used all kinds of curses to curse him to death. Of course, Golden Great Sorcerers knew that this was definitely Yi Fei's public extortion. He had angered the other Golden Great Sorcerers and conveniently took their anger out on him. But knowing was one thing. The Golden Great Sorcerer could not say anything. When Yi Fei came out of seclusion, as a good brother, he had to hurry over and congratulate him against his will. Little 9, congratulations. Even in our Roland's Golden Palace, you're the first one to master a Golden Great Sorcerer technique in a month. You're the first one. Brother, what are you talking about? I was able to master the Fallen God battle technique because you were generous and lent me so many magic crystals. Unfortunately, the number of magic crystals is still too little. Yi Fei sighed. In the space of the pagoda, he had been practicing his battle techniques and using his mental strength to deduce the immemorial heavenly technique. 10,000 magic crystals had already been used up by most of them. Therefore, when he saw the Golden Great Sorcerer monitoring him in the name of his brother, Yi Fei naturally would not be polite. He immediately planned to find an excuse to see if he could borrow some more magic crystals. Of course, he would definitely not return these magic crystals that he borrowed. The Golden Great Sorcerer's expression suddenly changed like the weather. Even the smile on his face turned a shade green. Brother, it's not that I don't want to lend you any more magic crystals. It's just that I don't have any more magic crystals. Moreover, the Battle of the 12 Roland's Golden Palaces is about to begin soon. Because I'm here this time on the orders of the Great Sorcerer. He wants you to go to the Xianming Hall immediately to participate in this election. What? The selection has already begun? All right, take me there immediately. Yi Fei let the Golden Great Sorcerer off without hesitation. Compared to extorting magic crystals, it was more important to destroy the marriage between the Divine Realm and the Sorcerer tribe. Only then did the Golden Great Sorcerer feel relieved. His pale green face also relaxed a lot. He hurriedly brought Yi Fei away from the Roland's Golden Palace to the most important palace of the Sorcerer tribe, the Xianming Hall. Chapter 1870. When he arrived at the Xianming Temple, Yi Fei was surprised to find that there was a tall statue of the wizard ancestor in the temple. The statue was of Xianming. It was an awe-inspiring and powerful wizard ancestor with a strong fighting spirit. The 2 palms of the statue were 2 huge fighting rings. One of them was the wizard god fighting ring, which was specially built for the wizard gods to settle their grudges. It was called the Xianming Upper Hall. The other was a golden fighting ring, which was specially built for golden sorcerers to fight. It was called the Xianming Lower Hall. One of the 2 temples was in the sky, and the other was in the ground. It represented the strict hierarchy of the sorcerer tribe and the huge gap between the wizard gods and the great sorcerers. When Yi Fei arrived, 12 thrones had appeared in the palms of the wizard ancestor in the Xianming upper hall. On the thrones, the 12 wizard gods of the sorcerer tribe sat solemnly on their respective thrones. There were men and women, old and young, and there were also strong and weak sorcerer gods. However, Yi Fei's fighting instinct told him that although the sorcerer gods were strong, their fighting strength was only slightly higher than that of an upper martial god. Compared to the two earthly venerables, the divine realm and the human god, there was a huge gap. That's strange. The sorcerer tribe's fighting skills and martial arts can be used together, and their powers are similar. Why is it that the sorcerer tribe's fighting strength is several times weaker than that of the human tribes? Yi Fei was puzzled as he looked at the high and mighty sorcerer gods. On the thrones, when Chen Liang saw Yi Fei, a trace of anticipation flashed across his eyes. He nodded slightly at Yi Fei, which was rare, and said to him telepathically, "Shangjiu, you must give it your all in this battle. Show the glory of our Roland's golden palace, and let me see the results of your cultivation." "Yes, great sage. Don't worry. I will do my best in this battle. I definitely won't disappoint you." Yi Fei's expression was very respectful, but he didn't address Chen Liang as his master. Chen Liang didn't care about Yi Fei either. Even though he had forcefully accepted Yi Fei as his disciple, other than giving Yi Fei a copy of the Parish God battle technique, Chen Liang didn't care about Yi Fei at all. Even Gong Zhu, who was ordered to keep an eye on Yi Fei, didn't know what Chen Liang was thinking. The other sorcerer gods present were even more confused. However, this did not mean that they would not pay attention to Yi Fei, especially after the news of Yi Fei possessing the golden treasure trove spread. Many sorcerer gods were shocked. Chen Liang, he's the kid with the golden divine treasure? What a pity. He possessed such great talent, yet he actually chose to walk down the path of the weakest battle shaman. What a waste of his talent. These sorcerer gods felt that it was a pity. After all, battle shamans had long declined in the sorcerer tribe. Very few sorcerers would choose to walk down the path of battle shaman, unless they were desperate. Chen Liang smiled and nodded expectantly at Yi Fei, indicating that Yi Fei could enter the golden arena. Yi Fei once again performed the sorcerer's etiquette to express his respect for the sorcerer gods. Only then did he step forward and enter the golden arena. Immediately, 11 sharp gazes shot out from the 12 stone pillars in the arena. The owners of these gazes were all young and powerful golden sorcerers. Many of them were disciples of the sorcerer gods, and they were also the group of young people who were most likely to become sorcerer gods in the future. However, what disappointed Yi Fei was that when he glanced at these young sorcerers, he found that other than himself, the others were either sorcerer gods or weapon shamans. He was the only battle shaman. It seems like battle shamans have a very low status in the sorcerer tribe. But it makes sense. It's because of the decline of the battle shaman sect that no one has discovered that battle techniques and martial arts can be used together. Strictly speaking, the sorcerer tribe could also practice martial arts, but the power they used was different. Ignoring the attention of these young sorcerers, Yi Fei walked toward the stone pillar that belonged to his Roland's golden palace. There was an altar on the stone pillar. This was the place where sorcerers performed their rituals. Unlike martial artists, sorcerers rarely fought face to face. They mostly performed their rituals on the altar and borrowed the power of heaven and earth to summon the wind and rain, killing their enemies without leaving a trace. Then, Yi Fei was enraged again. He found that the altar on the stone pillar that belonged to Chen Liang's Roland's golden palace had already been occupied. The one who occupied the altar was not a golden sorcerer, but an ancient desolate beast. Taking a closer look, it was a rare three-headed Lion King beast. It was also a strange beast that many weapon shamans liked to keep in captivity. What's going on? Why is there a strange beast sitting on the stone pillar of our Roland's golden palace? When Sorcerer Gongzhu saw the scene in the arena through the golden light screen, he suddenly flew into a rage. Although he already regarded Yi Fei as his mortal enemy, he also knew that Chun Liang had other plans for Yi Fei. But after all, Yi Fei was representing Chun Liang's Roland's Golden Palace. Now that someone had suddenly placed a Lion King beast on the stone pillar that belonged to Chun Liang's Roland's Golden Palace, it was not just an insult to Yi Fei, but to the entire Roland's Golden Palace. What the hell is going on? Who is it? How dare they? Do they think that there's no one in our Roland's Golden Palace? How dare they let a beast sit on the stone pillar that belongs to our Roland's Golden Palace? I recognize that Lion King beast. It belongs to Li Fire's Golden Palace. It's the mount of Grand Monarch Li Fire. What? Grand Monarch Li Fire? Hiss! The gold-ranked sorcerers who had been clamoring just now all shut their mouths and looked in horror at the red-faced old man who was surrounded by a scarlet mist. This old man was Grand Monarch Li Fire, the other sorcerer god of the 12 Roland's Golden Palaces. Yi Fei also stopped and looked at Grand Monarch Li Fire in confusion. Finally, he looked at Grand Monarch Chun Liang. Li Fire, you've gone too far this time. Why should we interfere in the affairs of young people? Grand Monarch Chun Liang was also somewhat displeased. After all, Yi Fei was still his disciple on the surface. To secretly arrange for a beast to occupy the stone pillar like Li Fire had done was not only an insult to Yi Fei, but also a disgrace to him. Faced with this question, Li Fire's face was completely cold. Chun Liang, for your sake, I'll let your disciple die with some understanding. Jin Wu is my grandson. Since he had the guts to kill Jin Wu, he must pay a price. What? Jin Wu is your grandson? The man your daughter married is Jin Shi. No wonder. I miscalculated this time. Grand Monarch Chun Liang took a deep look at Li Fire, then sat down with a gloomy face and no longer spoke. Many of the other sorcerer gods were still shocked. Although they knew that Grand Monarch Li Fire had a daughter, none of them had seen her before, let alone thought that Li Fire and Jin Shi had such a relationship. Chapter 1871. Grand Monarch Li's means were undoubtedly very clever. His revenge for Jin Shi was only secondary. His main purpose was to use this matter to suppress Grand Monarch Chun Liang and get rid of a competitor in advance. Those who could become sorcerer gods were all discerning people. Naturally, they could see Grand Monarch Li Hua's real intention. They were all secretly delighted. After all, there could only be one golden palace that could marry a divine god. Suppressing Chun Liang's golden palace in advance was also a great advantage for them. Therefore, all the sorcerer gods present collectively remained silent. They just watched all this with mocking eyes. Most of the young gold sorcerers in the Golden Arena were the same. When they saw that the Lion King beast was only staring at Yi Fei without any specific action, the young man from Li Fire's Golden Palace was even more furious. He immediately shouted angrily, "What are you waiting for? He's your food today. Eat him. I, Yu Ming, want his golden divine treasure." Roar. The Lion King beast's 3 heads also roared angrily. Seeing that there were no sorcerer gods to stop it, the Lion King beast's ferocity was completely aroused. A black shadow instantly jumped down from the stone pillar and pounced on Yi Fei. But what surprised many gold sorcerers was that facing this terrifying Lion King beast, Yi Fei seemed not to feel the attack. He was still striding forward toward the altar where Chun Liang's golden palace was located. However, in the process of walking, a terrifying murderous intent and anger suddenly erupted from Yi Fei's body. A scarlet blood sword appeared behind him. In his hands, he clenched his fists tightly, shining with a layer of golden fist radiance. Sorcerer art, golden blood sword. Combat skill, perish god. Whoosh! Yi Fei held the blood sword in one hand and waved his golden fist in the other. He never stopped walking. Just as the Lion King beast pounced on him, he cut off the Lion King beast's head in the middle with his sword. Then, both of his fists exploded at the same time, like a battle sorcerer slaughtering gods and demons. Many sorcerers only saw a dazzling golden light, emitting a dazzling and bright light. Then, a soaring blood radiance filled the entire golden arena. Boom! Yifei walked forward to the altar on the stone pillar. Behind him was the Lion King beast, which was comparable to the martial god realm. At the same time, Yifei was holding a huge lion head, and he suddenly threw it at Yu Ming, who had been clamoring for a while. Yi, you are a refugee. Yifei was the sorcerer god. How? 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 Ui. How? 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 You. Was. Li. Was. The instant he came back to his senses, Yu Ming's hair was already disheveled, and he ascended the altar to cast a spell. He summoned a void python out of thin air, and it bit towards Yifei together. Grand Venerable Li Hua, who was sitting on the throne, saw this scene. His expression changed. A battle sorcerer. How can he kill my mount? One had to know that the Lion King beast was no ordinary exotic beast, since it could become the sorcerer god's mount. It was an exotic beast that was comparable to a low-level martial god. To a sorcerer who had just become a gold sorcerer, it was definitely a nightmare. Grand Venerable Li Hua, who was sitting on the throne, never dreamed that Yifei could be so casual. He could kill a lower martial god just like that. The golden divine treasure is really extraordinary. It's worthy of the legendary sorcerer god's body. If he doesn't die, he will become a sorcerer god. That's strange. Isn't the battle shaman faction the cannon fodder at the bottom of the food chain? How can his battle techniques be so powerful? Many sorcerer gods were interested in Yifei, but there were also many sorcerers who were disdainful of Yifei's battle techniques. Humph! The battle sorcerer sect is useless except for being meat shields and cannon fodder on the battlefield. I'll let you know how big the gap is between a lowly refugee like you and us nobles. Yu Ming's body was burning with flames. While summoning a large number of void pythons, his body also expanded. Suddenly, he turned into an innate fiend god with a human face and a snake body. He shook his snake tail and opened his poisonous fangs. Like the king of snakes, he swooped down on Yifei. Sorcery, god perishing. Yifei didn't retreat. At this moment, his fists burst out with bright golden fist light again. At the same time, the blood sword floating behind him whistled. Under the control of Yifei's mind power, it seemed to come alive and turned into a terrifying mountain of blood swords. It crashed down and smashed the whole golden arena. The void pythons that were pouncing on Yifei didn't even have time to scream before they were crushed into meat paste. Kill! I'll eat you with my own mouth. Yu Ming roared, his serpentine tongue flicking out of his human face. His terrifying serpentine body was dripping with blood, and countless claws stretched out from within. Each of these claws formed a different blood seal and slapped forward forcefully. The huge mountain of blood swords collapsed in a split second. Yu Ming seized this opportunity. His snake body moved as fast as lightning, coiling and surging violently. Like a golden wave, he stirred up the entire space, causing it to explode loudly. A terrifying zone of nothingness appeared. Yifei's expression didn't change. However, when he used the god-perishing battle technique, he suddenly used the heavenly cauldron-suppressing god and dragon-suppressing 9 heavens in succession. Roar! A terrifying blood chi dragon suddenly roared out of Yifei's body. Its huge dragon tail slammed into Yu Ming's snake tail, immediately smashing the stone pillars and altar they stood on into smithereens. However, Yifei still didn't retreat. At this moment, he used the greater void step again. With one step, he crossed layers of the void and suddenly appeared in front of Yu Ming, who had a human head and a snake body. Then, a golden cauldron formed by psychic power, and the god-perishing fist smashed into Yu Ming's body with a boom. A loud boom. Yu Ming's eyes widened in shock. His huge snake body tumbled and flew out of the golden arena. Then he exploded in the air, dying a violent death. Yu Ming actually died so easily. Boom! On the other stone pillars, the remaining 10 young Grand Magi couldn't help but show a look of horror on their faces. On the throne, Grand Monarch Li Hua was so angry that the flames all over his body turned into a terrifying black sun, melting the throne behind him into molten iron. Chen Liang, this disciple of yours is very good. Not only did he kill my grandson, but he also dared to kill my Lion King beast and my disciple in front of me. Grand Monarch Chen Liang also stood up coldly and said in a deep voice, "Once in the arena, life and death are determined by fate. You set this rule. Therefore, when you secretly sent your Lion King beast to kill my disciple, I had nothing to say, and I wouldn't have intervened to save him. By the same logic, Shang Jiao killed your disciple." Chapter 1872. Chen Liang, how dare you go against me? Grand Monarch Li Hua was seething with anger. He had been holding back until now because he wanted to take advantage of this competition to kill Yi Fei. He wanted to avenge Yi Fei for killing Jin Wu, and at the same time severely damage the prestige of Chun Liang's Golden Palace. However, the terrifying fighting strength that Yi Fei suddenly showed had shattered all of his plans. Chun Liang's Golden Palace suffered great losses. What had Grand Venerable Li Hua ever suffered such humiliation? We're both Grand Venerables. If you want to fight, how can I not accompany you? I still say the same thing. Once you enter the arena, life and death are up to fate. Grand Venerable Chun Liang did not back down. It seemed that he suddenly attached great importance to Yi Fei and began to protect Yi Fei with all his strength. The other sorcerer gods did not want things to turn sour and ruin the marriage between Yi Fei and the divine god. They all stood up and tried to persuade them. Please calm down. Since we set the rules together, we must abide by them. If we break the rules, it won't be good for anyone. Seeing that the other sorcerer gods had begun to interfere, Li Hua suppressed his anger and said fiercely, "Fine, Chun Liang, you insist on protecting this kid, right? I won't let you have your way. All of you listen up. Whoever can kill Shang Jiao in the arena will not only be able to obtain his golden divine treasure, but I will also be able to obtain it. I will also personally teach him a god-level sorcery." Grand Venerable Li Hua was so angry that he made such a big promise. Only sorcerer gods could master god-level sorcery, which was equivalent to the cultivation method of earthly venerable martial artists. As soon as such a promise was made, the remaining 10 young grand sorcerers in the Golden Arena were immediately moved. Then, 10 pairs of greedy and indifferent eyes stared coldly at Yi Fei. Feeling these eyes, Yi Fei's heart sank. He faced them coldly and said, "What? You also want my golden divine treasure?" His indifferent tone made the weak young grand sorcerers feel a chill in their hearts. If Yi Fei had just entered the arena, they would not have taken Yi Fei seriously at all. But when Yi Fei killed the Lion King beast in a few moves and then defeated Yu Ming, no one dared to underestimate Yi Fei anymore. So what if I want your golden divine treasury? Not only do I want your divine treasury, I also want your life. Suddenly, on the stone pillar, a golden youth walked down the altar with an incomparably haughty air. When they saw the young man, many people's eyes changed, and Grand Shaman Gongzhu screamed, "It's over, it's actually Xian Tian." Among all the young senior magi in the 12 gold palaces, Xian Tian is definitely one of the best. Yi Fei also stared coldly at Xian Tian, who was walking down. Then, he looked at the other stone pillars and said, "What about you? Who else wants my golden divine treasure? Step forward. Insolent refugee, your status is as low as mud. How dare you shout at us nobles? I want your divine treasury. What can you do about it?" "Me too. I don't want your divine treasury. I want your body to be refined into a corpse puppet." 2 more powerful young senior magi stood up on the stone pillars. Their auras were comparable to Xian Tian's. They were undoubtedly the top group of young people in the 12 gold palaces. When they saw these people attacking together, another 3 gold senior magi stood up on the stone pillars without saying a word. Their eyes flickered, and they also decided to attack Yi Fei. God-level magi were really too precious and they didn't want to give up this rare opportunity. In the end, only 2 young senior magi were left on the stone pillars. They sat awkwardly on the altar. It wasn't that they didn't want to attack Yi Fei, but their strength was similar to Yu Ming's. They were not Yi Fei's opponent at all. In the end, they could only bide their time regretfully. However, the eyes of these 2 people were also flickering. Occasionally, a cold light flashed in their eyes, as if they were ready to seize the opportunity to give Yi Fei a killing blow. At this point, with Grand Venerable Li Hua's words, Yi Fei stood against all the gold senior magi in the entire gold arena. Senior Magus Gongju's face changed dramatically. It's over. We can't get back the 2,000 magic crystals we lent out. Grand Venerable Chen Liang's eyelids also twitched. Suddenly, he said telepathically, "Shang Jiao, if you can't beat them, escape from the gold arena. Even if you lose face, you can save your life." Escape? Are they earthly venerables or celestial venerables? A bunch of clay chickens and pottery dogs. Since all of you want my gold divine trove, then all of you can come together. Yi Fei suddenly laughed loudly. He might run for other things, but he absolutely couldn't run away from this battle. This was not only for the dignity of a martial artist, but also for Zhao Yu. He couldn't watch Zhao Yu become a sacrifice for a political marriage. Even if there was no other choice, and they really had to marry her, he would be the one to step forward and be the one to marry her. Kill! Yi Fei held the blood sword that was still dripping with blood and suddenly charged toward Xian Tian, who was the first to step forward. Xian Tian was immediately enraged. His murderous aura formed a terrifying spiritual fluctuation that squeezed the entire gold arena, causing it to shake violently. 10,000 arrows piercing the heart. Xian Tian roared. The entire gold arena was suddenly filled with countless spiritual arrows. Like a storm, like shooting stars, they shattered the void and shook the entire gold arena. Countless cracks appeared on the ground of the gold arena, as well as dark arrow holes. Perish the gods! Dazzling fist light shook the galaxy. Yi Fei's gold divine treasury was fully activated. He once again performed the Perish the Gods battle skill, causing his fist to be covered in layers of dazzling golden halos that swept through the fallen leaves like a gale. All the arrows that approached him were shattered. Not a bad battle skill. Unfortunately, you're still going to die. Now, I'll let you know the terror of us sorcerers. 10,000 arrows shatter the soul. Xian Tian's expression was arrogant. The spiritual nebula between his eyebrows spun crazily, forming a spiritual attack that was like a stormy sea. Under his spiritual control, countless rays of light suddenly burst out from the arrow holes that had already pierced through the gold arena. They actually returned from behind and rushed toward Yi Fei. His body. Heavenly cauldron suppresses the gods. Dragon suppresses the 9 heavens. Yi Fei roared in his heart. The blazing spiritual light once again condensed into a gold battle cauldron and a gold dragon. The gold dragon coiled around the gold battle cauldron, suppressing the universe. This wasn't the end. When he activated these 2 immemorial celestial arts, Yi Fei once again released all the spiritual power of his gold divine treasury, instantly releasing all the 6 paths and 7 arts of the 6 paths sacred sect. Boom! Suddenly, dragons roared, gods howled, demons howled, and ghosts howled around Yi Fei. At this moment, Yi Fei was like a demon that had walked out of hell. Chapter 1873. What are you waiting for? Do you really want this refugee to defeat us one by one? Xian Tian was shocked and angry. At this moment, he couldn't care less about his reputation. While he was asking the other young great shamans for help, Xian Tian also roared angrily. His body shook, and he turned into a huge golden giant. One of the giant's palms condensed a divine arrow, while the other hand held a divine bow tightly. At the same time, there were countless arrows whistling around Xian Tian. A total of 20,000 sharp arrows condensed by sorcery seemed to be piercing through Yi Fei's body, while another seemed to be piercing through Yi Fei's divine treasure. In addition to the golden giant that Xian Tian had transformed into and the light of the divine arrow that was about to be released in his hand, this person had actually released 4 arrow sorcery in one breath. Ordinary martial gods wouldn't be able to withstand such a terrifying sorcery attack, unless they were martial gods who could also control multiple primordial celestial skills. After seeing Xian Tian transform, the other young great shamans recovered from their shock. Although Yi Fei's 6 Dao, 7 techniques, and 7 techniques had filled them with shock and fear, they weren't alone. But in the end, they were not fighting alone. There were 8 of them, surrounding Yi Fei in the middle. Kill him, if we want to win and marry the god of heaven. The sorcerer Shangjiu is our biggest obstacle. Kill my children, attack, bite him to death. Buzz. Dark clouds suddenly appeared above the golden arena. Those weren't real clouds, but endless voodoo insects that rushed out from the void, devouring and engulfing everything. Even Yi Fei's psychic energy and the psychic energy arrows that filled the sky were targets of their devouring. When the voodoo insects formed a dark cloud and engulfed the mind energy crazily, the entire arena was filled with green fog. It was a voodoo curse released by a young great shaman. In the rolling, poisonous fog, ghostly howls could be heard. Countless people were killed by this young great shaman and turned into ghosts. Wailing ghosts rushed out of the poisonous fog. However, before these ghosts rushed to Yi Fei's side, a few young great shamans suddenly joined forces and communicated with the mind bridge, opening the real netherworld. It was a world of the dead. It was filled with pain, bones, and negative energy. When this energy poured into the arena, the entire golden arena was tainted with a boundless aura of death. A terrifying river of blood transformed into a torrential river, suddenly submerging the entire golden arena. Blood puppet, help me kill the enemy. A young man whose battle prowess was on par with Xian Tian was currently standing on the river of blood, spitting out large mouthfuls of blood. Every time he spat out a mouthful of blood, a blood puppet would rush out from the river of blood. It raised its sinister blood saber and mercilessly slashed down at Yi Fei. Just as Yi Fei was astonished by the strange attacks of these magi, another loud roar entered his ears. Looking back, Yi Fei was shocked to find that the broken body of the 3-headed Lion King he had killed had actually managed to stand up. The 3 heads that it had lost had also regrown. However, the strange thing was that they were not the Lion King beast heads, but Yu Ming's. Give me back my life. Yu Ming's head was on the Lion King beast's body, and it let out a sinister and strange roar. Yi Fei's gaze immediately turned cold, and he said coldly, I could kill you when you were alive, and I can still kill you after you're dead. Get out of my way. Watch me chop all of you up. Kill. Shaman art, perish the gods. Boom. Yi Fei's golden treasure trove was completely set ablaze. His terrifying mind strength formed a boundless golden divine light that filled the entire golden arena. Not only did it disperse the surrounding blood-red light and sinister coldness, but at the same time, a shocking battle intent suddenly turned into a shocking sword of vital energy. It slashed apart the Lion King beast with Yu Ming's head and smashed the blood puppet in the river of blood with a punch. Yi Fei unleashed the limits of his battle shaman body and also began to transform, turning into a terrifying dragon-like beast with fiery wings on its back. Roar! Yi Fei let out a furious roar. His whistling mind strength formed a special 8 notes of the heavenly dragon, which also shattered the vengeful souls that approached him. The 6 paths, 7 arts of the 6 paths sacred sect had been pushed to the limits by Yi Fei. A total of 7 immemorial heavenly arts shot out at the same time. Even if these immemorial heavenly arts were activated with mind strength and could only unleash 70% of their power, 7 immemorial heavenly arts stacked together. Their power was also very terrifying. The Shaman Dao light that filled the sky suddenly compressed rapidly. At the same time, boundless golden divine light erupted from Yi Fei's body like a hurricane, like the sun and moon. Ah! Before Xiantian, who had transformed into a golden giant, could shoot the golden arrow in his hand, Yi Fei's azure dragon's fury, which was comparable to a dragon-like beast, had already charged in front of him and exchanged a punch with the golden giant. Yi Fei was unscathed. A body comparable to a divine artifact was nothing in the eyes of martial artists, but in terms of physical strength, it was weak. In the eyes of sorcerers, it was an absolute nightmare. With just one punch, Xiantian's entire fist exploded in the air. Then it was his arm, his chest, and his head. Boom! 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 Yi Fei's body was surrounded by blazing mind strength. The 6 paths, 7 arts continuously bombarded the golden giant's vital points. By the time he finished using the 7 immemorial heavenly arts, Xiantian was already nowhere to be found in the golden arena. After Yu Ming, another great sorcerer from Roland's palace was punched by Yi Fei. That was because he had forcefully destroyed it. Meanwhile, Yi Fei was still unscathed. The 6 paths, 7 arts, in addition to the god-slaying battle technique and the golden blood sword, the power that Yi Fei had grasped was already equivalent to 9 immemorial heavenly arts, although the power of these heavenly arts was only 70%. However, a sorcerer's body was too weak compared to a martial god of the same level. Once a battle sorcerer like Yi Fei got close, no matter how strong a sorcerer was, only death awaited him. Kill. It was not enough to defeat Xiantian. In order to obtain the final victory and become a member of the sorcerer tribe, Yi Fei had to defeat all the gold great sorcerers in front of him and the entire Roland's palace. Only then would no one dare to oppose him and challenge him. Yi Fei's madness and the terrifying combat strength of a battle sorcerer made all the sorcerers on the divine thrones turn pale. How is this possible? The battle sorcerer sect has always been the weakest. Even if he has the golden divine treasure, this boy can't be so strong. Grand Venerable Li Hua was shocked and angry. He was so angry that his body was trembling. Oh my God! 9 golden sorcerer techniques. How long has it been since he broke through to the gold, great sorcerer realm? He has already mastered so many great sorcerer techniques. This is already close to the combat strength of an upper-level martial god of the human clan. A battle sorcerer can be so strong. Chapter 1874. All along, the sorcerer gods knew that the sorcerer tribe's power was only temporary. They could suppress the martial emperors and demigods of the human race at the sorcerer realm and the grand sorcerer realm. However, once a martial artist broke through the martial god realm and reached the supremacy realm, he would become an existence that the sorcerer gods had to look up to. Even an upper-level martial god could pose a great threat to the sorcerer gods. For example, at this moment, Yi Fei, with the body of a battle wizard, had directly defeated all the young sorcerers in the arena. This was a good example. In front of a martial artist's physical body that was comparable to a divine artifact and the terrifying immemorial heavenly technique, the gold sorcerers with weak physical bodies were like fish on a chopping board once they got close to them. They had no ability to resist at all. However, in this process, the sorcerers had also fully demonstrated the strangeness and terror of sorcerer techniques. Therefore, even if Yi Fei had defeated these sorcerers, he did not dare to give these sorcerers any chance to continue ascending the altar. After all, the sorcerers were not good at close combat. If these young gold sorcerers were given enough time to prepare and perform the heaven and earth sacrifice, the power of sorcerer techniques would also be extremely terrifying. Kill him. Weapon sorcerer, stop him quickly and buy time for us sorcerers to perform our sorcerer techniques. We are going to activate sorcerer techniques and directly shatter the sealed divine treasure. In the arena, there were also smart people who could see their own strengths and weaknesses. There were even a few sober young sorcerers who tried to retreat and join forces to activate the powerful sorcerer techniques. However, before they could really retreat, a huge gap suddenly exploded in the cloud of sorcerer insects that filled the sky. Yi Fei's expression was cold as he held the blood sword that was still dripping with blood. He raised his hand and released a beam of spiritual sword light that tore through the heavens and earth. It instantly shattered the 11 stone pillars on the golden arena. Similarly, the few gold sorcerers who had ascended the altar and tried to perform their sorcerer techniques were also shattered. Their bodies were also cut into two. They fell to the ground in extreme pain and fear, constantly struggling and wailing. However, they were countless times luckier than Xian Tian and Yu Ming. After all, Yi Fei continuously used many immemorial heavenly techniques and had to disguise them as battle techniques. The amount of spiritual energy that he consumed was extremely terrifying. Even if he had the golden divine treasure, he would not be able to sustain it. That was why Yi Fei only cut the sorcerers in half and did not turn them into dust. For sorcerers, as long as their divine treasures were still there and their physical bodies were not completely destroyed, they would not be able to survive. They could activate sorcerer techniques and shed their skin. Of course, in this process, Yi Fei had completely. He sorcerer techniques sorcerers. In the process stage level. Were. But Yi Fei did not plan to do so. These young sorcerers are the geniuses of their respective golden palaces. Killing them all will not do me any good. I will offend all the sorcerers and even affect my plan to participate in the marriage alliance. It is better to quit while I am ahead and leave some dignity for these sorcerers. Yi Fei did not care about the gold sorcerers who were still wriggling and shedding their skin. He retracted his spiritual energy and put away his golden blood sword. His cold eyes stared at the remaining 9 sorcerers like a terrifying dragon. Who else dares to fight with me? Yi Fei's voice was very calm. But in the ears of these young sorcerers, there was a great feeling of fear growing and spreading. I admit defeat. I am willing to give this marriage alliance opportunity to the 9 sorcerers. Suddenly, the 2 weakest sorcerers who had not made a move all this time retreated to the edge of the arena in fear and rushed out. They were running away without a fight. Unfortunately, no one laughed at them at this time. Everyone was scared by Yi Fei and had lost the courage to fight. Soon, another 2 young sorcerers bowed to Yi Fei with bitter faces and hurried out of the golden arena. Even the 3 young sorcerers who had just shed their skin were no exception. Soon, the golden arena became extremely quiet. Only Yi Fei stood alone on the only intact stone pillar. He raised his eyes and looked at the group of sorcerers on the divine thrones. Who else dares to fight with me? Yi Fei stared at these sorcerers fearlessly and then at Grand Venerable Li Hua. Humph! A villain intoxicated by success. If we had not made an oath not to interfere in this matter, I could have killed you 10,000 times with one hand. Grand Venerable Li Hua was furious. This time, he wanted to seize Yi Fei's weakness and attack Chen Liang's golden palace. However, in the end, not only had he suffered great losses, but he had also helped Yi Fei achieve his glory. Grand Monarch Li Flame was so furious that the flames wreathed him flickered like willow, the wisps, as if he wished he could burn Yi Fei to a crisp. Yi Fei sneered, shameless boasting. If we were in the same realm, I would kill you as easily as killing a dog. How dare you? As the sorcerer god, Grand Monarch Li Hua was being contradicted like this. Grand Monarch Li Hua could not restrain his killing intent. Seeing that Yi Fei was invincible as a battle sorcerer, Grand Venerable Chen Liang had already stood up in ecstasy. He blocked Grand Venerable Li Hua's sight and said, Li Hua, Shangjiu is my disciple. You better not go too far. The faces of the other sorcerer gods changed. They also stood up and tried to persuade him. Li Hua, Chen Liang, calm down. Don't ruin the important matter of our sorcerer tribe because of a small grudge. So, my disciple will marry a divine god's daughter. Do you agree to this? Chen Liang seized the opportunity to ask further. The faces of the other 11 sorcerer gods suddenly became very ugly, but they had no choice. They had agreed to decide the person to marry through fighting. Although the sorcerer tribe was cruel, they attached great importance to oaths. Even the sorcerer gods did not dare to violate them easily. Although Grand Venerable Li Hua was extremely angry, he could only nod with a livid face and say, well, Chun Liang, you win this time. Let's wait and see. Humph. Grand Venerable Li Hua left in a rage, not even bothering to look at Yi Fei. The other sorcerer gods smiled bitterly at the same time. Since the outcome had been decided, they could only nod together and say in a deep voice, since Shang Jiu won this battle, the person to marry into our sorcerer tribe will naturally be Shang Jiu. Congratulations, Grand Venerable Chun Liang. I was wondering why you took a battle sorcerer as your disciple. It turns out that you already knew the strength of a real battle sorcerer. There were also sorcerer gods who looked at Chun Liang enviously. If they had known that a battle sorcerer had such amazing potential, they would have taken Yi Fei as their disciple before Chun Liang did. However, it was obviously too late for regrets now. When the 11 sorcerer gods announced together that Yi Fei would represent the sorcerer tribe in Chun Liang's golden palace to marry a divine god, many of the sorcerers who were watching the battle outside Dark Underworld Hall cheered wildly. Most of the sorcerers who were cheering were battle sorcerers. Chapter 1875. Due to the decline of the battle sorcerer sect, even the sorcerer gods on the divine thrones didn't know that martial arts could also be used with mind power. Perhaps this was the reason why the battle sorcerer union had declined in the sorcerer tribe. After all, if a sorcerer knew both sorcery and martial arts, it was undoubtedly a terrifying thing. By then, the advantage that the human tribe's earthly venerables had over the sorcerer gods of the sorcerer tribe would be gone. The sorcerer tribe wouldn't have failed to break through the human tribe's impregnable pass after hundreds of thousands of years. Shang Jiu, come up here. I'll introduce you to a few elders. As soon as he stepped down from the arena, Chun Liang's joyful voice came from the divine thrones. Obviously, Yi Fei's victory this time had made Chun Liang proud. At the same time, the great power of Yi Fei's combat skills had also piqued the interest of the other sorcerer gods. That was why they had jointly asked Chun Liang to invite Yi Fei over for a chat. Yi Fei could only go over and bow to the sorcerer gods one by one. Greetings to all the sorcerer gods. Haha, my friend Shang Jiu, you're welcome. Since ancient times, the sorcerer tribe has been one family. Since you're my disciple, you're our nephew. The black-robed sorcerer god, standing next to Chun Liang, was very good with words. If Yi Fei knew that Xian Tian, who he had killed, was this sorcerer god's disciple, he would be even more surprised. After all, he had just killed Xian Tian. Not only was this black-robed sorcerer god not angry, but he also put down his pride and tried to befriend him. This showed how shrewd this sorcerer god was. After befriending Yi Fei, the black-robed sorcerer god's eyes lit up. He stared at Yi Fei and asked, "My friend Shang Jiu, there's something I don't understand. The other battle sorcerer gods are useless except for their physical defense. Why are your combat skills so powerful that you can release so many of them at once? Is this related to the golden divine treasure?" Although the other sorcerer gods didn't say anything, their eyes were all fixed on Yi Fei. This immediately made Yi Fei feel an invisible pressure. He knew that if he lied at this moment, with the strength of these sorcerer gods and the strangeness of their sorcery, it would definitely arouse their suspicion. Fortunately, these sorcerer deities only asked about battle shamans and not the origins of my battle techniques. Otherwise, it would be even harder to explain. Yi Fei sighed his heart, but he had already put on an honest smile that was unique to honest people. Seniors, I don't know if the other battle shamans are strong or weak, but I do know that in the memories that Shang Jiu gave me, his strongest point wasn't his spells, but his battle skills. Yi Fei had no choice but to selectively tell them about Shang Jiu. The grand sorcerers on the divine seats all nodded in agreement. While Yi Fei was talking, they had all been secretly activating their magic and monitoring Yi Fei's every move. Even if Yi Fei said half a word to lie to them, he wouldn't be able to hide from their senses. This brat is telling the truth. I didn't expect our guest to be true. In our shaman tribe, the strongest shaman isn't a weapon shaman or a weapon shaman, but a battle shaman. That's strange. Since battle shamans are so strong, why is the battle shaman sect in decline? It's as if someone doesn't want a strong battle shaman to appear in our shaman tribe. Those who could become sorcerer deities were not simple people. These sorcerer deities had only asked Yi Fei one question, but countless questions had already surfaced in their minds. These questions also caused some of the sorcerer deities to become unprecedentedly serious. This also caused Yi Fei to be secretly nervous. He was afraid that these sorcerer deities would ask him about the origins of his battle techniques. If that happened, he wouldn't be able to explain it. Moreover, if his explanation didn't make sense, the sorcerer deities might become suspicious of his identity. Therefore, before these sorcerer deities could continue asking, Yi Fei had already gritted his teeth and decided to give these sorcerer deities a harsh lesson. He didn't want these sorcerer deities to ask so many questions and accidentally give him away. Yi Fei quickly condensed a series of golden words with his psychic energy and said, "Dear Venerables, this junior dares not hide anything from you. This is the battle shaman path that I'm practicing. Seniors, please take a look and see if this battle shaman path is different from what other battle shamans practice." What? Battle shaman? Quick, show it to us. As expected, when Yi Fei took out the battle shaman path that Shang Jiao had passed down to him, all the sorcerer deities were visibly moved. However, the other sorcerer deities were ecstatic. Chun Liang, on the other hand, had a change in expression. There was a hint of anger in his voice as he reprimanded. Nonsense! How can the battle shaman path be spread so easily? Great Senior, please forgive me. I don't want to spread it either. However, Senior Shang Jiao said that his greatest regret in life was not being able to revitalize the battle shaman path. Therefore, he told me that if I have the chance, I must spread the true battle shaman path. Yi Fei's excuse was dignified. Even Chun Liang was speechless. If he objected, he would become a sinner of the sorcerer tribe. However, even so, there were still some sorcerer deities who refused to let Yi Fei off. The black-robed sorcerer deity suddenly spoke. This battle shaman path seems to only have the upper part and not the lower part. What about the lower part? Why don't you hand it over as well? Yi Fei retorted in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. Handing over the upper part of the battle shaman path is to revitalize the battle shaman path. Keeping the lower part of the battle shaman path is to settle down and settle down. May I ask, Great Senior, would you casually spread something that would help you settle down and settle down? You. The black-robed sorcerer deity's face flushed red. He wanted to fly into a rage, but he couldn't find an excuse to do so. Beside him, Great Senior Chun Liang also secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he looked at Yi Fei with an almost undetectable trace of coldness in his eyes. He shouted in a deep voice, "Nonsense! Don't be rude to Great Senior J-Dragon. You can go first. Come back to Roland's palace with me. I have some questions to ask you." Great Senior Chun Liang had deliberately emphasized the word master. Not only did he show his authority, but he also made it impossible for Yi Fei to refuse his orders. Yi Fei was instantly enraged. "This old thing, if you truly treat me as your disciple, I'll accept it even if you hit me or scold me. Unfortunately, you have ill intentions towards me." Despite his anger, Yi Fei remained calm and composed on the surface. He said with a hint of grievance and an apologetic tone, "Master, I can't go back with you now." Why? Seeing that Yi Fei had finally admitted that he was his master, Great Senior Chun Liang's tone softened slightly. "I'm a person who will take revenge for all enmity and repay all kindness. When I came to Lonely Ridge, I was taken care of by several bronze shamans. Now that I've struck it rich and met my master, I must repay them. Master, please allow me to return to Roland's palace after I've met these friends and repaid them. I'll ask for forgiveness from Master." Yi Fei's attitude was very sincere. Seeing this, many shaman gods couldn't help but nod inwardly. In addition, Yi Fei had taken the initiative to offer his half-step battle shaman path, and shown mercy in the arena by not killing all of their disciples. For a moment, many shaman gods admired this honest little fellow in front of them. Great Senior Qinliang, it's rare for your disciple to be so loyal and righteous. Let him go. All right, since you have such intentions, I won't stop you. However, you must repay your kindness. It's too shabby for you to go alone. Gongzhu, take a group of people and personally escort Shangzhu to Little Shaman City. Remember to go quickly and return quickly. You must also prevent some people from plotting against you on the way. Chapter 1876. Grand Monarch Qinliang thought for a moment, then took out a magic crystal pagoda and handed it to Yifei. Since you're repaying a debt of gratitude, as my disciple, you can't be stingy. Here are 10,000 magic crystals. Give them to the warlocks and tell them that the doors of my golden palace will always be open to them. Grand Monarch Qinliang was indeed a shrewd old fox. His methods were extraordinary. After discovering that he might have sent Zhu Gong to spy on them, he immediately handed over a large number of magic crystals. Even though Yifei knew that Grand Monarch Qinliang seemed to have other intentions, he couldn't help but feel suspicious. He wondered if he had misunderstood Grand Monarch Qinliang. But it's a waste not to take benefits. Regardless of whether there's a misunderstanding or not, I'll take these benefits first. Since he couldn't figure out, Yifei didn't want to think too much about it. He took the magic crystal pagoda and subconsciously reached out with his psychic power to check the magic crystals inside. Squeak, squeak. At this moment, Xiao Chao suddenly discovered something in the beastmark space. He hurriedly made a hand gesture to stop Yifei from opening the magic crystal pagoda. Yifei didn't bat an eyelid. He just picked up the magic crystal pagoda and glanced at it before putting it away. Disappointment and confusion flashed across Grand Monarch Qinliang's eyes. Aren't you going to open it and take a look? Grand Monarch Qinliang asked. Master gave it to me, so it can't be wrong. Thank you, Master. Yifei's expression was very respectful. He was so respectful that Grand Monarch Qinliang couldn't find any fault with him. At this moment, the other warlock gods came over and pulled Grand Monarch Qinliang aside, inviting him to study the secrets of the warlock cultivation method together. Grand Monarch Qinliang couldn't refuse. He could only glance at Zhu Gong before his gaze landed on Yifei. He said meaningfully, "Go and come back as soon as possible. Master still has a few battle skills. When you return to the Golden Palace, I'll teach them to you." Thank you, Master. Yifei bowed again. When he saw that Qinliang had no other instructions, he quickly left Dark Hall with Zhu Gong. As Qinliang's trusted subordinate, Gongzhu naturally understood the meaning behind the seemingly careless look. He immediately brought a few gold-rank magi and drove a magnificent black warship over from afar. Gongzhu said enviously, "Brother, you're really lucky this time. This is the Great Senior's carriage. Throughout history, other than the Great Senior, no one has ever sat on it. Thanks to you, Big Brother can finally sit on a warship and experience the awe-inspiring might of a Great Senior." That's right, brother. Let's set off quickly. Let's go to Little Witch City. All right, I'll do as you say, Yifei said calmly. Then, he casually found an excuse and walked into a room in the warship. Gongzhu's originally smiling face suddenly became incomparably gloomy. What is the Great Senior thinking? Sometimes, I feel that the Great Senior seems to have killing intent towards this kid, but sometimes I feel that the Great Senior values this kid very much. For so many years, he has secretly formed an alliance with the God of Heaven. However, I have never seen the Great Senior value a person or a matter so much. Gongzhu was a little bewildered. Obviously, he didn't know whether he should take advantage of the fact that Yifei was still alive to ask for the 2,000 magic crystals that Yifei owed him. Of course, Yifei shouldn't even think about not paying back the magic crystals that he owed. After returning to the room and making sure that there were no surveillance around, Yifei took out the magic crystal pagoda that Gongzhu gave him and personally set up a layer of spiritual defensive light shield. Only then did Yifei release Xiao Chao the dragon turtle, and Ling Siki from the beastmark space. Xiao Chao was still the same as before. The first thing he did when he came out was to grab a piece of mind power from somewhere and roll around happily on the ground, causing the dragon turtle to gulp repeatedly. However, Ling Siki didn't play with Xiao Chao this time. Instead, she reminded Yi Fei sternly, "Little Gua, you didn't bring the pagoda that the great senior Chan Liang gave you, right? Don't worry, I left that pagoda outside," Yi Fei said solemnly. When Xiao Chao had reminded him, he had already known that there was something wrong with that pagoda. Even though his mind power hadn't detected anything wrong with it, the divine eye of heaven's spiritual eye was very special. However, Xiao Cao's heaven and earth spiritual eye was extremely mystical. She could see many things that even the martial god couldn't see. Yi Fei asked Ling Siki curiously, "What did Xiao Chao find on it?" "An eye. A very evil eye." In the beastmark space, Ling Siki had been communicating with Xiao Chao for a long time. When she was talking, she took out a small black card. There was a strange, triangular vertical eye drawn on it. It looked very much like the eye of a snake, but it was even more sinister and evil. With just one look, Yi Fei felt a chill run down his spine. He was even more certain that the great senior Qin Liang didn't have good intentions when he took him in as a disciple. Yi Fei's expression immediately turned ugly as he muttered to himself, "What should I do? I finally defeated the other golden palaces and became a member of the great senior Chan Liang's family. I don't know why that old fox is secretly plotting against me. Could it be that I gave myself away and was discovered by that old fox? Did he?" However, he quickly rejected this conjecture. If the great senior Qin Liang had really discovered my identity, he wouldn't have tolerated me until now, let alone forcefully take me in as a disciple. Yi Fei was somewhat bewildered. Although Ling Siki was innocent, it didn't mean that she wasn't sensible. Hearing Yi Fei's analysis, Ling Siki's little face turned pale. She said in horror, "Little Gua, let's run. No matter what the witch god's goal is, as long as we run away, he won't be able to hurt us. At this critical moment, we have to be strong." Ling Siki suddenly paused. After all, in the Tianling continent, women were respected. There were domineering women everywhere. Ling Siki naturally hadn't heard of words like "a strong warrior breaks his arm." However, Ling Siki quickly thought of another sentence to replace it. Ling Siki waved her fist and said, "Little Gua, at this critical moment, we have to have the determination to break the dragon turtle's tail." Roar? The dragon turtle was surrounding Xiao Chao and was rolling around with Xiao Chao. It also took the opportunity to steal the spiritual energy that Xiao Chao grabbed. When it suddenly heard Ling Siki say that she wanted to break its tail, the dragon turtle's face turned ashen. Its black mouth also turned white at a speed visible to the naked eye. Whoosh! The dragon turtle had already retracted its tail into its shell. It had also made up its mind not to reveal its tail for the next month. Yi Fei was speechless. However, Ling Siki's words reminded him that since the witch god had secretly attacked him, if he didn't think of a way to retaliate, it would be extremely dangerous for him to continue staying in the witch tribe. Chapter 1877. Yi Fei did not act rashly and continued to cultivate silently in his room. Gong Zhu heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Yi Fei was fine. After all, the battle prowess that Yi Fei had displayed was too terrifying. Gong Zhu was not sure if he would be able to stop Yi Fei even if he had 3 gold rank magi with him. Yi Fei. Fortunately, this kid didn't run away. As long as he doesn't run away, I can't be bothered with him. The great sage will take care of him later. Gong Zhu steered the warship and rushed to Little Witch City at the fastest speed possible. Knowing that the great sage's warship had arrived, the city lord of Little Witch City, a gold rank magus, immediately brought his subordinates to receive the great sage. Even though he knew that the person who had come was not the great sage, but the great sage's disciple, the city lord of Little Witch City did not show the slightest bit of disrespect. He respectfully invited Yi Fei to the city lord's mansion and followed Yi Fei's orders to gather the bronze rank magi who had brought Yi Fei to Little Witch City. They came looking for him together. There were more than 20 magi in total. When they had brought Yi Fei to Little Witch City, it was purely because their team was short of manpower that they had captured Yi Fei. However, these magi had never dreamed that the little magus they had brought in would not only break through to become a gold rank magus in such a short period of time. The great magus had even joined the Roland's palace and became the witch god's disciple. While these magi were shocked, they also looked at Yi Fei with envious gazes. Yi Fei also chatted with these magi very amiably. After all, without these people, he would not have been able to enter Little Witch City and the ancestral witch temple smoothly. To some extent, it was these bronze rank magi who had helped him cover his identity. Yi Fei decided to be generous for once. He took out a lot of magic crystals and gave them to them. Of course, Yi Fei's purpose in coming to Little Witch City was to get rid of Chun Liang's surveillance. When he realized that he couldn't get rid of Chun Liang, Yi Fei quickly thought of a way. That was to use force to force Gong Zhu, Chun Liang's trusted aide, to reveal Chun Liang's secret. Hence, after receiving these bronze magi and holding a banquet, Yi Fei secretly pulled the worker to the side and whispered, "Brother, come here for a moment. I have something to tell you." As Gong Zhu drank his wine, he faked a smile and said in disdain, "Brother, you're not going to tell me that you're actually the new emperor, are you?" Gong Zhu had already heard this joke twice. He didn't find it funny at all. He even had the urge to pin Yi Fei to the ground and beat him up. "If you want to tell me a joke, fine. But first, return the 2,000 magic crystals you owe me." Earlier, Gong Zhu had seen clearly that Yi Fei had paid for the Magi's magic crystals out of his own pocket. In other words, Yi Fei hadn't touched the 10,000 magic crystals that Chun Liang had given him. He had kept all of them for himself. Hence, after thinking it over, Gong Zhu finally decided to ask Yi Fei for the magic crystals he had lent him. Yi Fei was a little speechless. However, he also discovered Gong Zhu's other shortcoming. He was greedy for money. Most greedy people weren't unyielding, so it was very likely that he would be able to get the secret out of Gong Zhu. Yi Fei nodded decisively and said, "You're my brother. What's mine is yours too. How can 2,000 magic crystals be enough? To be honest, I kept the great sage's magic crystals because I wanted to split them equally with you." "What? Split them equally?" Gong Zhu's eyes brightened. He slapped his thigh and became incomparably enthusiastic. "Oh, my brother, why didn't you say so earlier? I really didn't misjudge you. I didn't take you as my brother in vain. What are you talking about, brother? If you hadn't brought me to the Golden Palace, how could I have received the great sage's appreciation? This is all thanks to you, brother. Let's not alarm the others. Let's find a place and split the magic crystals first. Otherwise, the other great magi will be jealous," Yi Fei said in a low voice. Then, he secretly pointed at the empty warship. Gong Zhu smiled knowingly. He understood that Yi Fei didn't want to attract attention. Gong Zhu happily reopened the warship's restriction. The two of them re-entered the warship and walked into Yi Fei's room. Yi Fei said generously, "Brother, you've helped me so much. I don't have anything to repay you with. Here, these 10,000 magic crystals are all yours." "What 10,000 magic crystals?" Gong Zhu's breathing quickened. He was so excited that his whole body was trembling. When he took the magic crystal pagoda, he sneered in his heart, "Ha! This kid is really stupid and naive. I sold him, and he actually helped me count the money. This pagoda looks familiar." Yi Fei smiled and said, "Great Magi Gong Zhu, don't you think this pagoda looks familiar?" "Shangjiu, what do you mean?" Great Magi Gong Zhu suddenly became incomparably angry. He found that the magic crystal pagoda was actually lent to Yi Fei by him. What made him even more unbearable was that there wasn't even a single magic crystal in it. This seemingly simple and honest kid in front of him actually dared to trick him. Facing Gong Zhu's anger, Yi Fei didn't get angry. He only showed a very bright and simple smile and said, "Nothing much. I just want you to meet someone." Ling Siki greets, Great Magi Gong Zhu. In Yi Fei's room, a little girl the size of a rice grain suddenly appeared, then quickly grew bigger. She turned into a little girl about 10 years old. Great Magi Gong Zhu turned back in horror. Human demigod, how dare you sneak into our little Magi city and enter the Great Magi's worship? Wait, this is the Great Magi's worship. How could a human demigod break in? Although Gong Zhu was greedy and had a big mouth, he was definitely not stupid, as he could become a great magi. With just a little thought, he felt that something was wrong. The great magi immediately roared, and his great magi gold skin emitted terrifying golden flames. Without saying a word, he rushed out of Yi Fei's room. He also wanted to escape from the worship. Unfortunately, Gong Zhu's movements were fast, but Yi Fei's were even faster. Just as Ling Siki appeared and attracted Gong Zhu's attention, Yi Fei had already roared in a low voice. 8 immemorial celestial arts were instantly activated by him and blasted towards Gong Zhu. Afraid that this wouldn't hurt Gong Zhu, Yi Fei made up his mind. The moment he released the 8 immemorial celestial arts, he also used Du Tian Phaseless Disaster in one breath. Roar. In Yi Fei's room, the roar of the heavenly dragon and the destructive light of the phaseless disaster continuously blasted on Gong Zhu's body. Even though the great shaman Gong Zhu had the strength of a peak mid-god, he was caught off guard and was heavily injured. He spat out blood and staggered. Ling Siki, who was opposite him, exhaled and turned back into a beautiful young lady. She smashed Gong Zhu's nose until it bled. Shangjiu, how dare you collude with the human race and betray the great magi? Gong Zhu roared furiously. After all, he was an experienced great magi, an expert of the magi tribe who was comparable to a mid-level martial god. Even though he was beaten so badly, he could still struggle. Yi Fei and Ling Siki were both shocked. Just as Yi Fei was hesitating whether he should be more ruthless to shut Gong Zhu up, Xiao Qiao suddenly charged out of the beast-marked space riding on the dragon turtle. Furthermore, the dragon turtle had become incomparably huge. Its terrifying weight was like a bright black star. With a boom, it fell on its buttocks. With a bang, it sat on Gong Zhu's head. Chapter 1878. Dragon Turtle. You can actually make a grand shaman faint from sitting on him. Yi Fei and Ling Siki widened their eyes. Xiao Qiao also had an incredulous expression. Only the dragon turtle was smug. For the first time, it felt that eating too much was also a great ability. Its tail, which was originally tucked in, couldn't help but stand erect. There was a reason why Yi Fei tricked the grand shaman Gong Zhu onto the warship. After all, this was the sorcerer god's warship, which was comparable to the divine temple's sun god ship. As long as the restriction was lifted, no matter how intense the battle was, it wouldn't arouse the suspicion of the other gold shamans in Little Shaman City. However, as fast as he could, he dragged the unconscious grand shaman Gong Zhu out from under the dragon turtles, but threw him into the magic crystal pagoda. Then Yi Fei, Xiao Qiao, Ling Siki, and the dragon turtle rushed in together. Little brother, what should we do? Ling Siki was a little worried. Their original plan was to capture the grand shaman Gong Zhu, but they didn't expect the dragon turtle to make a grand shaman faint. This was also the biggest weakness of shamans. They were too weak in close combat. If the other party was the martial god, and the dragon turtle dared to sit on him like that, the dragon turtle would probably be the one to explode. However, although shamans had weak defense, as a gold shaman, the grand shaman Gong Zhu's recovery ability was still very strong. After being unconscious for a dozen breaths, the grand shaman Gong Zhu regained consciousness with his powerful spiritual energy. He opened his eyes in a daze and saw Yi Fei and Ling Siki, who was beside Yi Fei. Qi's eyes were burning with rage. Shangjiu, what are you doing? As a shaman, you actually surrendered to a lowly human. Lowly human? Grand Shaman Gong Zhu, it seems like you still don't understand the situation. Dragon Turtle, slap him. Yi Fei sneered. The dragon turtle immediately took out a black jar and smashed it on the Grand Shaman Gongju's face. The Grand Shaman Gongju's nose bled again, and he was so angry that tears fell out on the spot. He was a gold shaman who was so noble and honorable, but he was knocked out by a black turtle and even had his nose broken. Blood. The great Shaman Gongju's eyes were blazing with anger. He roared, "Shamans can be killed, but not humiliated. Shangjiu, I thought you were my brother, but you colluded with the human race and plotted against me." Yi Fei sneered and said in a low voice, "You think I'm your brother? You've been spying on me and treating me like a brother. You knew that Grand Sovereign Chen Liang wanted to harm me, so why didn't you warn me?" Great Shaman Gongju's face was filled with shock. "Great Senior told me to monitor you. That is a secret. How could you possibly know? Just who are you?" "Great Shaman Gongju, who am I? Didn't I tell you earlier?" "I'm Yi Fei, the new emperor you're looking for." With a thought, Yi Fei removed the concealment divine battle robe. His hidden spirit immediately reappeared. His appearance and aura also completely recovered. "The new emperor. You're actually the new emperor." The great Shaman Gongju had been ordered to hunt down Yi Fei, so of course he had seen Yi Fei's portrait and was familiar with Yi Fei's aura. When he saw the young man in the black robe in front of him and recalled how Yi Fei had joked about him being the new emperor twice in a row, the great Shaman Gongju suddenly felt very sullen and infuriated. After all this time, the new emperor he was looking for was right in front of him. Not only did he not discover him, he even thought that Yi Fei was joking. "I hate you so much." The great Shaman Gongju let out an extremely regretful roar. Suddenly, a terrifying light flashed in his eyes. But before the great Shaman Gongju could use a shaman technique, Yi Fei suddenly snorted coldly and also mobilized his golden divine treasure. A terrifying spiritual pressure formed into a spiritual mountain and crashed down on the great Shaman Gongju. The great Shaman Gongju had been seriously injured by Yi Fei, and his golden divine treasure was a level lower than the golden divine treasure. Under the suppression of Yi Fei's golden divine treasure, he suddenly couldn't move. He could only stare at Yi Fei with a murderous gaze and roar, "Human Emperor Yi, killing me won't do you any good. Once I die, because great sovereign Chen Liang will know immediately and come to kill you. Don't worry. As an elder brother, although you have bad intentions towards me, we are sworn brothers. I won't kill you as long as you answer a few of my questions," Yi Fei said in a low voice. A cold smile flashed across the great Shaman Gongju's face. "Do you want to know why Supreme Chen Liang asked me to spy on you? Let me tell you, that's a pipe dream. I will never betray Supreme Chen Liang, let alone reveal any secrets to lowly humans like you. You're about to die, and you still dare to curse. See how I'll beat you." Ling Siki was very angry. She suddenly grabbed the dragon turtle's black jar and smashed it at the great Shaman Gongju. Clang! The black jar and the great Shaman Gongju's head collided. As a result, there was a hidden horn on the great Shaman Gongju's head. Not only did the black jar not break the horn, but it also broke a hole in itself. The dragon turtle was very distressed. Yi Fei was also a little surprised. Then he thought of something and said coldly, "So that's how it is. Martial arts and battle skills can be interlinked. Weapon shaman and supreme magic shaman can also be interlinked. No wonder you can withstand two of my supreme skills without fainting. You're actually walking the path of supreme magic shaman and weapon shaman." "What did you say? Martial arts and battle skills can be interlinked. How is that possible?" The great Shaman Gongju was also shocked by Yi Fei's words. Suddenly, he came to a realization. In the Golden Arena, you didn't use battle skills at all, but martial arts. How is it possible that our shaman tribe can also use martial arts? The great Shaman Gongju was completely stunned. Yi Fei understood this feeling. When he discovered the secret of the interconnection between battle skills and martial arts, he also felt that it was unbelievable. But the truth was so. "For the sake of my sworn brother, Gongju, I'll give you one last chance. Tell me the information I want, and I promise not to kill you. What do you think?" Yi Fei asked forcefully. "Yi Fei, Even if you beat me to death, I will never lower my head to you lowly humans. The great shaman Gong Zhu was very unyielding. Yi Fei didn't expect to be able to make a great golden shaman submit easily with just a few words. Xiao Qiao, try using your vine whip. Xiao Qiao's eyes lit up when she heard this. She had fought against martial gods before, but she didn't seem to have fought against a great shaman. Therefore, Xiao Qiao happily summoned a vine whip and hit the great shaman Gong Zhu with it. The great shaman Gong Zhu immediately laughed wantonly. Ha! Is there no one else in your human tribe? The ones who come out are either turtles or little girls who can't grow up. This is so funny. Boom! Before the great shaman Gong Zhu could finish laughing, a violent, 8-colored spiritual wind suddenly filled the entire magic crystal pagoda. The great shaman Gong Zhu's words undoubtedly angered Xiao Qiao and Ling Siki at the same time. The dragon turtle couldn't stop it in time. It could only look at Ling Siki with heartache. Then, it picked up the black jar and smashed it at the great shaman Gong Zhu's head. It was unknown whether it was due to the great shaman Gong Zhu's anger or the right angle, but with a crack, great sage Chun Liang's horn was broken. However, Grand Monarch Chun Liang didn't care about his broken horn at all. After all, no matter how hard the black vat hit him, it was only a flesh wound. When Xiao Qiao got angry, she would lash out with her vine whip, which was a terrifying killing weapon. Chapter 1879. A gold-ranked Grand Magus did not have a divine soul and could not feel the pain of the god beating whip whipping his soul. However, the power absorption of the god beating whip was still there. If the Grand Magus Gong Zhu could resist, it would be fine. However, he was now seriously injured, and his golden divine treasure was completely suppressed by Yi Fei's golden divine treasure. At this moment, the Grand Magus Gong Zhu was undoubtedly a huge magic crystal. When Xiao Qiao's vine whip whipped over with the 8-colored spiritual wind, a layer of majestic spiritual energy flowed through the vine whip and into Xiao Qiao's body. Xiao Qiao could not help but burp as if he was very full. The dragon turtle was envious. The Grand Magus Gong Zhu let out a terrified scream. What are you? How can you absorb my spiritual energy? I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. Spiritual energy was the source of a Grand Magus's power. It was similar to a martial artist's blood essence. Once a martial artist lost too much of his blood essence, he would grow old and die. By the same logic, if a Grand Magus lost too much of his spiritual energy, not only would his divine treasure level drop, but his divine treasure might also collapse, and he would become an ordinary person. To the Grand Magus Gong Zhu, who had reached the gold-rank Grand Magus realm and was comparable to an intermediate martial god, this was definitely worse than killing him. Xiao Qiao, he actually called you a Grand Magus. You can't forgive him. He must be beaten up. Ling Siki spoke up for Xiao Qiao. Squeak. Xiao Qiao burped. This meant that Xiao Qiao was also very angry. Once Xiao Qiao was angry, the consequences would be quite serious. Boom! A loud sound of a violent spiritual wind whistling through the entire pagoda space could be heard. Xiao Qiao had already used all her strength. The vine whip in her hand turned into more than a dozen vine whips. In the end, these vine whips gathered together to form a special emerald green divine whip shadow. Pa 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 pa. It hit the Grand Magus Gong Zhu's body. That feeling was no different from a mortal being struck by lightning. Even though Grand Magus Gong Zhu did not have a divine soul, he could not help but let out a painful scream. What he felt was not the pain of his body, but the great grief and anger in his heart. This was because the deity's striking whip that Xiao Qiao had summoned with all her strength had actually caused a clear crack to appear on the divine treasures of the great shaman Gong Zhu. This kind of injury immediately caused the great shaman Gong Zhu to be stunned. Gong Zhu's strength immediately. If Xiao Qiao whipped him again, it was likely that great shaman Gong Zhu would fall from a lower-level martial god to an ordinary silver-skinned shaman. It was also this discovery that made the great shaman of Gong Zhu scream in fear. This little girl is so terrifying. She actually broke my divine treasure. I have been working so hard for 300 years, and finally, I became a senior magus from the lowest junior magus. I have suffered so much, endured so much humiliation and suffering. I cannot let my divine treasures shatter, and I absolutely do not want to turn back to silver skin. Grand Magus, Brother Yi, Emperor Yi ladies, Brother Black Turtle, I beg you let me go. As Yifei expected, a greedy person like Gongzhu was definitely not a stubborn person who would face death unflinchingly. He was even worse than the Blood Demon. At least the Blood Demon persisted for an hour before he surrendered. Gongzhu, on the other hand, had decisively betrayed Grand Magus Chunliang after being whipped twice. At this time, Gongzhu did not need Yifei to interrogate him. He was afraid that he would fall from the Grand Magus realm. He spilled the beans and told him everything about how Grand Magus Chunliang had asked him to spy on Yifei. That's all I know. As for why Grand Magus Chunliang asked me to spy on you, I really don't know. Brother Yi, Emperor Yi, for the sake of us being sworn brothers, please let me go. Gongzhu looked at Yifei in horror and almost begged. He was not a person who would face death unflinchingly. He was also famous for his big mouth and bootlicker in Chunliang's Golden Palace. In order to survive, he naturally did everything he could. By the way, I still have more than 4,000 magic crystals. If you let me go, I'll give you all of them later. I'll lend you 2,000, and you still have more than 4,000. Yifei was very surprised. The dragon turtle's eyes widened even more fiercely. He hurriedly went to persuade Xiao Qiao to stop hitting him. If Senior Shaman Gongzhu was beaten down to the level of a senior shaman, this person would commit suicide in a fit of anger. Then, the loss would be too great. Xiao Qiao took back the vine whip. It was not because he listened to the dragon turtle's advice, but because the spiritual energy of the Grand Magus was too strong. Xiao Qiao only used the deity whipping whip to absorb it twice, but he already felt full. Chunliang, since you don't treat me as your disciple, don't blame me for not treating you as my teacher. Gongzhu, if you want me to let you go, it's very simple. I want you to return to Chunliang's side and find out why Chunliang wants you to spy on me. You are his confidant. If you ask, he will definitely reveal something. Yifei thought for a moment. He quickly thought of a way to make use of Gongzhu. That was to sow dissension. He could directly instigate Gongzhu, Chunliang's confidant, to betray him and let him spy on Chunliang to obtain information. Gongzhu's expression immediately changed. The plan I revealed to you is already very dangerous. You actually want me to be a witch traitor. Yifei coldly warned Gongzhu with a simple smile. Anyway, you have already betrayed me once. It doesn't matter if you betray me a second time. By the way, I recorded everything you said just now. You said that if I bring this back and give it to Chunliang, you're not the human emperor, you're the devil. What sins have I committed to actually become sworn brothers with you? You've tricked me to death. Gongzhu was so angry that he vomited blood on the spot. He couldn't help but shed tears of regret. He reluctantly compromised. You said that I betrayed you once. I don't care if I do it again. The second time, I'm willing to be your spy. But Human Emperor Yi, don't burn the bridge after crossing the river and sell me out. Brother, don't worry. I'm an honest person. If you don't believe me, I can make an oath or sign the witch oath. Yifei's expression was serious. He also lifted part of the suppression on Gongzhu. Gongzhu smiled bitterly. He also stood up and said seriously, Human Emperor Yi, don't joke around. Who in the witch tribe didn't know that the human emperor's oath was bullshit? It definitely couldn't be trusted. I want to officially become sworn brothers with you. With heaven and earth as my witness, we will swear a blood oath. Whoever goes back on their word will die a horrible death. Gongzhu threw caution to the wind. In order to live, even if he had to be a witch traitor, he would accept it. Yifei was speechless. He was obviously an honest person. Why didn't anyone believe him? Of course, this was also Wang Bai's fault. He had ruined the human emperor's reputation too thoroughly. Now, he had implicated himself. However, considering that there were many witches in the witch tribe who needed the cooperation of a witch traitor like Gongzhu, Yifei couldn't refuse. He could only nod and say, Okay, we will swear a blood oath. However, This elder brother must be me. Chapter 1880. Cursing angrily was one thing. With his life in Yi Fei's hands, the great shaman could only force a smile. He formally burned yellow paper with Yi Fei, announced his birthday, and knelt in all directions, officially becoming sworn brothers. Then, the two of them cut their fingers together and shed their life essence blood, holding an ancient and solemn blood oath. Although this oath didn't have a divine soul oath, nor was it bound by an innate divine spirit like the ancestral shaman's oath, the great shaman miraculously felt relieved. Yi Fei also felt very speechless. He didn't believe in a binding oath, but he believed in a blood oath that didn't have any binding force. From this, it could be seen how thoroughly Wang Bai had destroyed the reputation of the human emperor. However, if he asked himself honestly, although the blood oath didn't have an absolute binding force, as long as the great shaman didn't do anything to betray him, with Yi Fei's character, he really couldn't do anything to the great shaman. However, second brother, although we have feelings for each other, we can't be careless about the ancestral shaman's oath that we should sign. After the blood oath was completed, Yi Fei naturally assumed the posture of an elder brother. The great shaman was a few hundred years old. It was already very disadvantageous for him to become sworn brothers with Yi Fei, but he still had to settle for being the second brother. He was very angry, but when he saw Xiao Chao burping and looking at him with sparkling eyes, obviously already thinking of him as a human-shaped magic crystal, the great shaman couldn't help but show fear on his face. He obediently and solemnly swore the ancestral shaman's oath, promising that he would never betray Yi Fei. He was willing to be the second brother and work like an ox or a horse for Yi Fei. Yi Fei still didn't dare to rest assured. He repeatedly checked this oath and immediately pointed out a few slippery places in the great shaman's oath. Second brother, are you bullying me because I'm an honest person? You only said that you won't betray me, but there's no time limit. This can be interpreted as you won't betray me now, but in the future, you will still betray me. You might betray me. Also, you haven't written down the punishment for betraying me clearly. You're not sincere at all. Every time Yi Fei pointed out a place, Gong Zhu's complexion would turn a shade paler. By the time Yi Fei finished speaking, Gong Zhu had already collapsed to the ground. Only now did he realize that in this world, the most terrifying person wasn't Empyrean darkness, but an honest person like Yi Fei. Tianfeng tribe. Countless magi were panicking as they discussed amongst themselves. Have you heard? Shang Jiao is back. That terrifying witch. He's coming for revenge again. What? Shang Jiao? Heavens! That devil is not dead. He's still alive. Back then, he almost destroyed our tribe. Could it be that the heavens want our tribe to perish? In the Heavenly Wind tribe, Shang Jiao was definitely a scarier existence than the devil. As a half-wizard, he had condensed the golden divine treasure and single-handedly slaughtered a powerful tribe with hundreds of senior wizards, almost exterminating the entire tribe. Even though tens of thousands of years had passed since his battle prowess, it still made many older gold rank magi tremble in fear. Then, everyone looked in the same direction. The palace where the tribe leader was. That was where the current tribe leader of the Heavenly Wind tribe, Jin Shi, was in seclusion. Everyone in the tribe knew that the bloodbath back then was all caused by Jin Shi. If it weren't for Jin Shi's arrogance, he wouldn't have forced Shang Jiao to become a witch and become an existence that struck fear in the entire Heavenly Wind tribe. As for Jin Shi's father, after discovering the powerful talent that Shang Jiao had displayed, he had died in endless regret and pain. In other words, the only person in the Heavenly Wind tribe who could stop Shang Jiao's revenge was Jin Shi. If even Jin Shi couldn't stop Shang Jiao, then what awaited the Heavenly Wind tribe was complete destruction. Hence, even though many people were secretly dissatisfied with Jin Shi's coercion toward Shang Jiao back then, there were still many old gold rank magi who knelt outside the palace with the golden dome and prayed in panic. Ancestor God, Please let Jin Shi break through the Supreme Being realm and become a witch god. Don't let Shang Jiu come back. He's crazy. He's a witch that will only bring destruction. Boom! Perhaps it was because of the praying, or perhaps it was because of Jin Wu's death in battle. But the news of Shang Jiu's return had greatly stimulated Jin Shi. Jin Shi, who originally still had a few decades before he could step into the Supreme Being realm, suddenly exploded with a terrifying wave of consciousness in the entire palace. Then, this wave of consciousness went deep into the heavens and earth, deep into the starry sky, and deep into countless lands of the sorcerer tribe. Boom! The heavenly way sensed it, and at this moment there was a huge roar. Then, a straight golden pillar of light broke through the dome of the palace, and broke through the entire heavens and earth. In the broken heavens and earth, there stood a dazzling golden figure. It was a handsome young man with golden hair. Tens of thousands of years had not left a single mark on his body. The merciless passage of time had not worn away his arrogance. Shang Jiu is just a lowly slave. So what if you have the golden divine treasure? Back then, I could trample you under my feet like a dog. Back then, I could humiliate the person you love to death. I could crush her tombstone in front of you. Now I can also trample you under my feet. You bastard, you know the huge gap between you and me. My husband, Jin Wu, died so tragically. You must avenge him. As Jin Shi broke through the sorcerer realm and rushed out of the palace, a woman in a palace dress suddenly appeared outside the palace. She cried and threw herself into Jin Shi's arms. This woman's body was bloated and her size was frightening. Her face was very old and wrinkled. Tens of thousands of years had not been able to defeat Jin Shi, but he had defeated this woman. This made Jin Shi feel extremely annoyed. He had just come out of seclusion, and when he heard that his only son had been killed, Jin Shi was instantly furious. A loud slap landed on the woman's face. Go away. What did I say? Before I broke through to the sorcerer realm, I would not let Jin Wu go out and cause trouble. Now, he died in the hands of my bastard brother. This is the greatest shame of my life. The woman covered her face and looked in disbelief at the husband she had missed for thousands of years. Suddenly, she roared hysterically, Jin Shi, you're heartless? If I hadn't taken a fancy to you back then, will my father have nurtured you? He taught you witchcraft and helped you become the sorcerer realm? Now that your son has been killed, you don't care? Xin, I am old and weak. How dare you abandon me? Slap. What answered the woman was another resounding slap to the face. This slap was exceptionally heavy, causing the woman to spit out blood from her mouth. Jin Shi's expression was cold. He looked at the woman with disgust and said, Of course I will avenge Jin Wu. But since you know you are old and weak, why do you still come out and make a fool of yourself? Now that I have broken through to the sorcerer realm, I have a long future ahead of me. Do you still want me to look at your ugly old face like before? Here you go. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.